using
streaming.
a like post-processing on your like some sort of filter on your video? It looks like there's almost like a Photoshop kind of filter on your face going on.
That you're seeing through Zoom. Oh
Uh-huh.
no, it's I don't know what does that, but it looks like pastel artifacts or something like it like blobs
Yeah.
different things into like chunks. I don't know. It's weird.
All right.
Only my built-in webcam does that, so I don't know why. Okay, yeah. So we are live. We are live through OBS as well. I'm gonna grab that link. Grab the new link. And post that. I'm just posting it on the Portal Mountain lobby. Okay, dang it. I hate when the link doesn't show up in your channel yet. Like, I know it's streaming. It's
Right.
just not
Yeah.
there. Has YouTube emailed me yet? No, I guess they haven't. Video unavailable. Alright, so I guess it's gonna take a minute.
Do you have you don't run one screen with the sort of YouTube status page that shows your stream health and your chat window, or?
It's in a web browser. Like, I'd have to keep going back to it. No, I don't.
Okay. No, no, no. I'm just, yeah, okay.
I don't have a separate, like, really. Just my
Are
cell
you
phone.
recording? You know you can record locally with OBS, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I am
All right.
doing that as well.
Okay.
Come on, I know we live. 3 days ago. Uploads all videos. Come on. Oh, wait, there. Yep. Here we go. 3 days ago. Up. Okay. So I got my link. I'm going to paste it to the lobby and see if anybody's there. All right. I think that's it. I think we're back. We're back in business.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So aside from just the fact that we did a little bit of chatting but decided to restart the stream,
Yeah.
there wasn't really much. We didn't really get into anything yet. Like, we just
No.
have talked about David Bowie a little bit. And yeah. Nice.
Got some fascinating geopolitics going on.
Oh damn, yeah. All that shit. Is it World War III yet? Bastards.
It's closer than ever.
Yeah. Yeah, and
you're the one who wanted to immunize the eschaton.
well, like, yeah, I know, like, when reality starts to poke through, it's like the things fall apart kind of thing. You know, the so-called apocalypse. It doesn't have to be an Armageddon, though. It doesn't have to be.
You know, it doesn't have to be, but one threshold I crossed in my brain, which really is making me wonder, in this solipsistic way, if I am really controlling all of this, is that I had to cross this threshold in the last few days where I had to consider the fact that it might be. Like, not that it is, right? Like, so it's stages of the process. Is this the quote unquote versus a quote unquote?
Yeah.
Or, you know, if it's a quote unquote, could it also be the quote unquote?
Yeah.
And I think that you have to kind of like allow it could be, you know, it doesn't mean it has to be, but there's also this part that you have to sort of consider that it could be, and that informs decisions as well. And so it's really weird that I actually crossed that threshold a few days ago, and then we get into, like, you know, geopolitics this week, you know.
Yeah. What the? Just getting my monitor back up. There we go. Yeah, and this is kind of like okay, it's 2020. It's the year 2020.
And it's off to quite the start, yeah.
Dang it! If the owner has granted you access, wait, did I just send the old link? No. So I can't get into it. I mean, I guess I don't need my monitor, but oh, this one's private now too. What? I started 4 minutes ago. Okay, let's make you public. This is the current live stream. I don't know why it set this to private. Save. Let's try again. Yeah, so this kind of like the geopolitics and all this stuff, like rearing its ugly head. This makes me think again about like why do I do the stuff that I do? Why do I do the work that I do? Like my own, out of my own motivation. You know, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
From other people's perspective, like why do you keep doing this work? And why does it never stop? You know, like my free time and all that. I don't know, not all my free time, but you know what I'm saying. Like,
well, I mean, like, do you want to be part of the club that is making this thing? I think is the question. Like, do you have a choice, first of all? And secondly, you know, what role do you want in helping shape reality effectively?
Yep.
I've been through, I feel very much like specifically I kind of graduated to a new tier in the last couple of days, and all of these things kind of like hit at the same time.
I felt that too the last few weeks.
Yeah. And speaking of the monomyth, we were watching Mindhunter, which is a show on Netflix about FBI profilers, but there was this really like kind of key moment where they were talking about how when you have the FBI agent kind of at the core of it has a lot of intuition, like he just kind of flies by intuition, and it, you know, can kind of have these chaotic results. But the kind of the boss comes in and says, you know, and gives this analogy for when you're training a racehorse, and you know, when you have like a racehorse that shows promise but can be chaotic, you put blinders on the racehorse while you're training it. And like it hit like just, you know, in a way like a day or 24 hours, 48 hours before a particular set of blinders came off for me, and I was like, yeah, that seems about right. And even when I, you know, kind of heard that moment, I'm like, yeah, and you know, I've had that sensation before, but it hasn't been quite as profound as what I'm experiencing now. But when something very like high pressure, which would have set me off, like the geopolitics of the last 12 hours or so, there's this weird thing that like I've been kind of in a way pre-processing it. Like, you know, I needed to be in a particular headspace to be like completely calm in this moment. And I think that's kind of part of the mechanism. It's like you feel these waves coming. And so that, you know, who knows how many, you know, levels on this tower are, and you know, once you're sort of initiated into this climb, like how far you go, and then like what this must feel like, you know, when you're really at front and center. And then the question is, what part of the team, which I believe the distributed network, never goes front and center. So it's like we're kind of all co-creating, co-processing. It's a processing thing. It's like we are watching the different nodes of the hive mind, and in order to insulate ourselves from having to take on so much stress individually, this is the sort of way that we tap out the communication for these moments and have the meta communication, the protocols, if you will, or the actual communication of what's going on, how do we discuss this, how do we communicate this to other people, and then you know, that's when the magic happens.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I remember feeling like a lot of weight on my shoulders, like right when the spirit came to me or whatever. I had this feeling of insight into the suffering of all people, like everywhere. Like you're just feeling it, like what is going on, like everything. Like imagine how bad it is in my own vicinity, and this is where we have it good. You know what I mean? Like the rest of the world, it's like just utter chaos. Like nothing is. It seems like there's very low grade order, kind of keeping things in check, kind of thing. But so that it's necessary, and that's the way that it works, for us to rely on each other, that we each have a different piece of the puzzle. This is kind of one of the core things. We each have our own, not only our own perspective and our own network, but then our own skills and abilities kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Right? So you got to
Yeah.
feel your network out and then use what you got with other people. And then, but then there's also other networks entirely with people there who are like you or like some people you know. And that network may have access to different facets of the skill set or
It's
whatever.
very compartmentalized. It's very just naturally compartmentalized, but it's like the doors between those compartments seem to open at the right time. It's almost like it's like an airlock almost, like when the pressure balances between the two spaces, then the
Mm-hmm.
airlock door opens and then you can move through into the sort of like next compartment, if
Yep.
you will.
Yes, and that's kind of like the functioning of the protocols or whatever, like to help make those bridges, like the core meta stuff that connects us in that way that can't be said, kind of thing.
Right.
And that's all the inner model, like that's your inner coherence with what you're able to perceive. So it's not like
Right.
I can tell you XYZ and then you know XYZ. It's like no, you need the experience for one to bootstrap that understanding,
Right.
that inner model.
And then the more times you kind of go through that process, the more, it's not like, in some ways, it doesn't necessarily get easier in general. It's just you become more attuned to certain phases in the process. So that causes you less stress. But
Mm-hmm.
because you're less stressed in that phase of the process, it allows you to handle more kind of universal content, right? Like that's the climb. The first stage is you're sort of learning this weird process, and you're actually, I think we're actually writing it too, right? Like to do it is to write it, to recreate it,
Mm-hmm.
where you build it as you go along. um but then, once you sort of are used to kind of navigating between cells, or to different groups or whatever, then when one of those like transitions occurs, or the kind of the stars align or come together or whatever, it's not like you're so fixated on that occurrence. You can just kind of get down to business. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a lot of what this is. It's like spending less time when, the protocols become less about paper and whatever, and just become very intuitive, and you just kind of go to the next
Yep.
step. And that's kind of in your language. Um, the, there's like, when people first become attuned to like profound synchronicity, especially people who are very like keyed into it and they see it, like they become so fixated on the details. They just want to say, and then I saw this, and I'm including
Right.
myself. It's
Yes.
like, and then there's this, and you try to like relate it to people. And then the person on the other side of the conversation, especially someone who already gets it, is kind of like, gets your point,
Yeah.
gets your point, gets your
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
it's no longer new to that person.
Yes.
But at the same time, I've personally gone on this weird journey where I'm like, no, we need to relate this thing. We need to show someone what it's like to sort of start seeing the signs and what that means. And so like then I became kind of meta fixated on it. And I feel like, especially in this last little
Yes.
stretch, I'm sort of graduating past that, because I kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, it's like I've found the level of partners that I need, and like the organic connection. And it's only because of connection that we created that thing was able to happen yesterday,
Nice.
on SOTS. So because it just kind of like, it gave me both the confidence and the context to say, oh, this is what happens, and this is a place where it happens. And
Yeah.
there's this, shared set of languages that we already had just by nature of being in that place. And then we have, these new things, we put them together, and it's like, okay, what does our new club look like? So it's like you're always recreating your org every
Mm-hmm.
time you create a new group, but it's on both sides, right? Like the person who already has created their org, then they start from scratch again too.
Yes.
But I think just like no longer focusing on the actual synchronicities, you start focusing on the mechanism of the protocols and just kind of do it. It's just like that's sort of, I think, the
Yeah.
progression.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think, where you and I, kind of the path that we're going, we're going down a very educational wing, right? Like, so this is the
Mm-hmm.
meta part. Our role in the current phase we're in, I think, is to sort of like help people who are on this path or get onto this path pick up that education. And so it's weird because we kind of have to focus. So like right now, we're having a very meta discussion. You and I are
Mm-hmm.
discussing something that we're doing. We're over discussing it for an external
Yeah.
audience.
Yeah, yeah.
So even as we're saying, well, you don't really have to focus on it, we're actually focusing more on it just to
Well,
try and
it's our
like show other people.
perspective. We
Yeah,
are developing the core right now, and
right,
our product is essentially intended for what I call members of the guild. So that's another way of saying like that's the whole thing, the spiritual rebirth or whatever, like your cosmic shift, um, all this kind of stuff like that reorientation towards this self-reference, like seeing the tree of life in yourself and everywhere, that whole
right.
connection. Like this, I'm just throwing out a bunch of stuff there, and that's what membership is,
Yeah.
to the core. So our product right now, or what we're doing here is more for members who kind of already have that intuition. They've had some kind of shocking life experience and their life has changed completely, and these are the
Right.
type of people that are that already know why they want to get together with other people, but they don't know how to do it properly.
Right.
So
Exactly.
they end up picking up these little disparate projects here and there, but they don't know how to mesh them all together. And
Right.
that's the core. That's what we call the fundamental guilds. That's having the model of how this all works within you. That
Hmm.
way you can express it, and it can have meaning and coherence outside in the environment and with
Right.
others. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is exciting though. Like I've been on this. I felt like I've been on this threshold for even years now, like years. Oh, I can play the game now. I can play the game. I know how to play it. Like I can play Deck Protocol right now. You know, I know how Deck Protocol works. I've had this in my mind, but it's like how to get it started. It's insane. Like there's so many little facets and stuff like that. Um, and
I'm interested to see if you're going to be able to relate it to me because you're kind of. I've never played a single game of like Magic the Gathering, for example. So like it's to
Right.
me this is going to be an interesting. I'm glad that you're streaming this so that people can see the process of trying. What we're doing right now is we're demonstrating how to harmonic but different levels of players or the game are trying to
Mm-hmm.
make a certain kind of connection and build a new protocol, like a network protocol is what we're actually doing here. And
Mm-hmm.
so by you trying to, show me how to basically build this game that we are going to play together, other people can watch this process if they're interested
Mm-hmm.
and sort of like make their meta connection to see what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, so like one of the first things that's kind of happened here, you could say, is that and we already have a relationship established, but this is something that you may do when you get to know somebody new that you don't know. You kind of like try and vibe and see what level they're on, kind of thing.
Right.
And that's kind of like what you could say what we've already done, because I had in at least in this stream, because I mentioned like membership in the guild and what that is, and I just gave
Right.
some things, and you could be like, oh yeah, I know what you mean. And then okay,
Right.
now we know, like we're at least we're talking member to member, so we can behave in a different way. It's not like member to participant, for example, where I'm like, okay, talking to, like, say, I don't know,
And
just
it's sort of important for me to actually state in a meta sense this way that me, Corey, like the nomenclature, the guild and all of that, that's not my core language. It's like I have learned to speak a little bit of, I'm speaking German and you're speaking French, and I've learned to speak French, and I no longer go, what is that? I'm like, okay, I learned
yeah,
to speak but I think the language that you're creating is very accessible to a particular demographic and a larger audience. And me personally, I see my role is to sort of connect some very disparate groups in
yeah,
this overall game.
yeah,
So this is a discussion that I'm having right now for people who may see this. I think you know
yeah.
this already. I know this already.
That's
But
important.
like the words that you're using are not necessarily the words I would use. But I don't feel like we really have to dive deep into membership in guilds, because I think it should be self-explanatory
Yeah.
to the people who've made it this far into this
Right.
conversation.
Like it has to be mentioned to some degree, and all that I'm doing is giving a map of relations. Ideally, like that's kind of what I'm doing. But to your point, yes, these symbol sets, as we call them, can be tailored to any culture. It's the isomorphism between the sets that's important. So you have a mathematical mapping that this means that, basically, like kind of one to one. It's what's your symbol? What's your preferred symbol?
Yeah,
Um,
I'm so
yeah.
excited because the conversation I had last night was nothing like this, but
Yeah.
it's another version of this.
Yeah.
And it's like in this conversation, they're like, we need a math guy, and I'm like, oh, I know some people who's connected to some math people,
Yeah.
and so and for me, this is thrilling because I've always said, look, I'm kind of this sort of like macro, linker, meta linker between these things, and I can see these groups that I can then assemble into sub teams,
Yep.
and so like, yes, exactly. So
Nice.
you are paving that road to connect with, these, I'm just going to say vague other people, because for the purposes of this stream, it doesn't matter who the actual people
Yeah.
I spoke to last night. The point is, they speak a very different language. We connected through sort of music history and storytelling and screenwriting and a different thing, but we're talking about the same types of things in a very different language.
Yep. Yep, and kind of similar, related. So I mentioned, I think, to you that not too long ago, that 2 years ago I had kind of joined a church. So I got into like the Christian culture and scene, and just trying to make some friends, connections, and find out how does Christianity work, or how is it being presented
Right.
at this one church? Like, what's the inner workings of it? And
My mom would be very happy to hear that.
as this model developed, I found that I was able to clearly speak and convey Christian concepts to Christians
Exactly.
using
Yeah.
Christian terminology.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Well,
but I get
because
it.
you've
I
come
get
from a
it.
culture, or you belong to a culture for a while that didn't have any ability to connect to that. You only knew the things from the
Yeah.
outside, and especially the distasteful things.
Yeah.
That you didn't necessarily have the connectivity to see the part of that culture that worked.
Right. Yeah, and we atheists basically don't have words for the things that we're describing. So
Bingo.
what do you
Bingo.
do?
Bingo.
What do you do when there's literally not a word for it? Don't say God. Yeah. Don't ever say anything like that. Like, because that's an idea someone has in their head, which is not what it is.
We are right in the middle of it right now. This is like, and this is my special kind of madness. The fact that I'm just kind of like sitting here in the middle going, yep, I can hear both of those things at once, and I'm only going a little bit insane.
Yeah. Yeah, so connecting people together, that's what this is all about. Probably 3 or 4 years ago, we used to joke that and call this Illuminati networking, but it's the good Illuminati. That was kind of.
I don't know that that's a joke. I mean, like, and that's sort of the important part. It's like, haha, first, and then you're like, no, but really.
Yeah.
You might as well say what it is. And see, that's actually a different approach that you and I have. Part of my approach has been, one of my barriers to entry, one of my requirements is that you have to be able to endure a certain amount of offense and still be able to hear. Like, there's a process that I sort of like intuitively put people through and go through. It's like almost a punch match of like, how much can I offend you and how much can you still hear me?
Yes.
And saying some of the things we just said in the last 2 minutes those are the buttons that people will literally tune out of this video.
Yeah.
The God word, the Illuminati word, like nope, gone.
Yes.
There's so many of those hot button safe space words across all divides.
Yeah.
And learning how to bridge them without just immediately shutting your mind off, that is the mastery. That is absolutely the mastery. To be able to hear a word that just stabs a knife into you, that normally or in the past would have just shut you down, or people like you would have shut you down. Just like, find a translation. You can do it. It's there.
Yeah.
Not be perfect. Slug something in. Keep talking. Keep trying to connect. Keep going.
Yes.
And for me, my sort of thing is try not to lose your cool. Be calm.
Yeah. I'm usually pretty calm, so I'm lucky that way.
Yeah. We have very different tempers.
Yeah, like if you can maintain a dialogue, an open dialogue, that's at the very least participation. Like, at least.
Well, and you're an introvert by nature, a huge introvert, right? Like, so this is really, you've gone a long way stepping out of bounds to really kind of work those extroversion sort of muscles, right?
Yeah. It's been a challenge, but I love it.
Cool.
Just the whole, again, like we talked about last time, the idea of live streaming, like. Think about doing it. You think about doing it. Not you, Corey, but anybody watching. Like, imagine yourself pressing the red button, and now you're just talking, and people are potentially listening.
Yeah.
right? And
And
at your
you don't have to be worried, you don't want necessarily a big crowd. It's just this process of putting yourself out there.
yeah.
Yeah, because that's what you're doing when you're, going up to someone you don't know and speaking. You are broadcasting yourself to an audience of one, and you're standing on that stage. So you
Yep.
might as well just jump into the deep end of the pool,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been great. A wild few weeks, that's for sure. Like just getting these ideas, I kind of have like an obsessive kind of way of processing things sometimes. Like I'll get an idea, I'll just focus right on it and just like drill and just drive right into it.
Oh yeah, we both have that.
Yeah, like I won't
Yeah.
let it go. It'll go unhealthy, and then until I
Yeah.
like feel like I've
Hmm.
processed it, and okay, what's next?
Right.
Like I know there's gonna be a next. I just don't see it yet, but I know there will be. So I just keep
Right.
going after it, and it just keeps blasting through like level after level. Like just
Yeah.
go. That's how it feels, anyways. Like it keeps breaking open into more potentiality, more potentiality.
Yep.
Like what's possible.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's cool. This is a great kind of introduction or introduction to the game that I want to introduce
So
you
let me
to.
kind of like really quickly.
Yep.
I assume you're feeling a bit anxious now. Are you pounding an energy drink by any chance? Like you're
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
I am.
So you're pacing. I just want you to be aware
That's
of this. Like now I'm sort of like, okay, I'm stepping back into my I'm a director. This is my venue. I want
okay.
you to be aware of what
Let
the
me be very
perception of
like
you.
cool and.
Yeah, like sometimes sit down and just look at the camera as if it's your friend. And I'm
Yeah.
not, and I think this is instructive for people too. It's like because it's this challenge. You don't want to be too aware of how you're coming off.
Right.
Like if you become fixated on producing yourself, you can't be you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like you have to be aware of people come in and they see you doing this. You're not going to be able to connect to various people. So it's
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know
no, I get the image. Thank you for the reminder.
just
Um,
just
it
heads up.
reminds me of when I did my 33-hour like uh, channeling project or whatever. Like I
Sure.
would pace like mad, like just like
Yeah.
just into my little recorder there. Like it helps. It can help.
Oh yeah. Well, and it's part of the thing, the weirdness. This is kind of one of my core issues is that this is not real life, where it's a simulation of real life, and that this language of production, the industry I've worked in for 20 years, has created these expectations for very attractive people, at just the right angles,
Yeah.
framed in just the right way, talking to the camera and speaking directly to your soul.
Uh-huh.
And that's and even in movies, people, the actors, when they're talking in a two-shot, are like right in each other's faces in a way that humans just don't do.
Yeah, yeah,
But like that's the sort of like visual language we've become accustomed to when you're watching someone on the screen. And
yeah.
some
Hmm.
of us have learned, it's a technique. We learn how to do it. And then, for someone like me, there's this sort of like added level of can I put my real self into it while I'm not reading someone else's dialogue. I'm just being myself. I'm looking at
Hmm.
a piece of plastic, but I'm imagining you, the audience, there behind it.
Yep.
Um, but it's this sort of meta example of one of the things we're facing in this era. A lot of this is about human to human connection, and our
Hmm.
expectations based on digital media, and sort of like this is my deal, right? Like so, people, this is the expectation for an extreme close up. Like I should have been hugging the camera the whole time if I was talking to people on the other end. Um, but like I was just being myself back here, lounging. That's who I really am.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so I think it's important not only to think about that, not so much to get paranoid about your quote unquote performance, but when you're watching media, and you, the viewer, or you, Brian, are watching media, understand that when you're seeing a person well manicured sitting on screen with makeup, and that's not
Right.
real life, but it's
Hmm.
triggering certain things in your brain, and you feel like you're getting communication, and you're having a dialogue, but you're really not. It's something else, and that's part
Right.
of the deal at the core of this too.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's it. That brings back that point of editing versus live streaming. This is not edited.
Editing versus live streaming, and and understanding that you get 1,000 people for a solid 90 seconds, and you're going to get 5 people who can make it all the way through 2 hours. That's a yeah.
Hmm.
But you can't just cut to the good parts. You have to go along the entire journey. A
Yes.
conversation, yeah, is a thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's quite a thing,
Yep.
production and all that.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a very, very powerful tool slash weapon that we've created, and it took me, 20 years working with it to understand how dangerous it has been and how changed we have become. First through the original broadcast medium, and then within the last decade, especially the always on digital social version of it. I
Hmm.
think especially in the last 15 years, it's become especially sneaky because there's much more of a feeling of interactivity. And like, one of my first job titles was multimedia producer. I worked on interactive media. And you're simulating a human interaction. And so as this has progressed, and then the addition of the social component, it's completely replaced a large portion of people's, primary means
Yeah.
of interaction with the world. And it's, I've had a propensity to get really panicked about it. Um, at the end of the day, you have to kind of strip out the good or bad and say, well, that's just what we are now. Where do we go from here?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I see where your thoughts are going there. It's kind of scary to think like how we've been domesticated in certain ways.
Right.
Oh boy, oh boy.
Well, it's just it's the latest stage of human development. We're not a static, life isn't static.
Yeah.
We change. And actually, I think it's really maybe a really great point to kind of bring all these things together. And this thing that we're doing, the way that we're calling it a game, but is a fundamental aspect of the sort of connectivity of the human hive mind. That's a part
Hmm.
of this thing too. This is not something that's new to the media age. As a matter of fact, what we're doing is we're sort of pioneering a way to do this in a media content, something that was done, through religious connectivity and also through, secret societies and stuff like that in real
Hmm.
life. This is nothing new. It's just a, remix of an old type of connection.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we definitely
Let's get into
lost.
you want to get into the game? You want to
Sure.
talk about the card game?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, we definitely threw out the baby with the bathwater as far as like the Enlightenment and getting rid of religion, so to speak, and all that.
Unquestionably, we go through moments where we lose the important things, and their lack of being a component of our social structure hurts us, and then we have an opportunity to re-find it again.
Hmm.
Whether or not we do, that's a
Yeah,
question.
that's
But
the
like
idea,
we're
is that it's
yeah,
always there because the self is always there, and the self can
yeah,
always be referenced, even if we're out in this virtual machine of our identity, which is kind of
right,
like a segment of our potentiality, right? We can
yeah,
still come back and look into ourself. It's perennial in that way, I guess is the word.
yeah,
Always coming back.
yeah.
So yeah, why don't we jump in? Um, I guess you can't see my, you don't have another monitor or anything, right?
I mean, I can pop up another window if I need to.
If you can pull up the live stream,
Yeah,
it's
that's always super trippy, but I'll make an exception
yeah.
in this case. I did bring my external monitor, so I have the ability to put this wherever it needs to be.
Cool.
But I do only have one camera. Um,
Yeah, that's cool. I'm just wondering
okay.
if you're able to see.
It says this video is private, but maybe that's the first one.
Yeah,
So
I just sent you a link, a new one.
okay. Do. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to mute that because hearing myself on a delay
Yes.
is a
Good call.
certain way to. Oh, okay, so I see your cards.
Good call.
Excellent.
Yeah, so you could
Okay.
zoom in on that portion of
Uh,
the screen, I
I'm
guess,
not
maybe. I
even
don't know.
sure. Can I even do that? Is No, this video is not going to scale.
Yeah.
No, I don't think that that's actually going to
I wonder,
happen
is there a
for
way?
me.
Okay, I know how. I can just do it in OBS. Can I? Can I? Yeah, like I can make. So there's that one. Hold on, let's go. Scene 4. So for this one, we'll add display capture. No, what do we add? Video capture device. Okay, and to add the external vid. No, that's the wrong one. Video. We want this 260, yeah. Oh man, what do you... Have you ever seen an OBS where you added a video source and its window is like literally 0 length and width, and it's in the top left corner as a red box, but you can't
Resize it? No,
grab
I'm
it?
not sure.
It's this one here. Anyway, okay, so I'll just mess with this one here. That's fine. I'll just
You'll have to
expand
clip this out of the rebroadcast.
Well, who's got time for that? Okay, check again.
Okay. Yep. I see
It's
it.
kind of looking better. Okay. So I don't know if you'll be able to read stuff off here, but at least we'll get. So this is the game that I played before with my coworker yesterday. So we can see that we took sheets of paper, like these were literally, that's how big the paper was, and just cut them all in half. Or what you're seeing there is 20 seconds delayed, which is kind of going to add. So this is just a sheet of paper cut in half.
Okay.
And so each of these then is a card. So
Okay.
so what we did is we took these and split them up like blank, just blank, started out blank, gave each other say 10 cards. And then we went from there. And so
Okay.
I'm thinking that I don't want to actually go through this because that would be kind of redundant. This is another game in another context, you could say. But what I tried to do was set my buddy up with a starter deck. Okay, so that's kind of the idea that I'm having for what I want to do with you right now.
Okay, so you want me to pull 10 cards? Like,
Yeah, no, I'm just, you don't even have to do that. So I'm going to pull up a stack here. But yeah, get a stack ready. Like say, whatever, 10 cards, it doesn't matter.
okay.
And so, okay, so I'm gonna see if I can, I'm probably gonna follow the general, how the game went before. Just one sec here, I'm just sorting these through, so. Just sorting out this little mini deck that I made, and I'm going to find which cards that I want to try convey to you. So the kind of idea of this game is that normally both of us would have decks which are full.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to pull up the Zettelkasten. That's what we call the box that you actually hold your deck in. It can be a Ziploc bag, like that could be your Zettelkasten. All it is keeping them safe and protected. And here you can see on the stream in a few seconds, I'm just pulling out. This is literally my deck right now, with some spare cards. Let's see. So these are spare cards in the middle. This is how I've just held it. I put spare cards in between. This is my old deck here on the right side. Like that's what I went through. I actually processed through this whole thing, and this game can be single player. Like that's kind of the idea. You will be having your own deck. So in other words, your own database to work with and do whatever you want. And the more you can organize that and do things on your own, potentially the more dynamic and just better, I guess, that the games, that multiplayer, that cooperative games might be.
Okay.
So what I did was, this was a few days ago, I did like 10 hours straight of just looking through this deck here, and it's all of my old, like so many old cards. It's like kind of sorted all around, but what I did is I marked up every single one. I went through every single card and found what I was going to take from it I marked up the categories of certain cards, like what type of card they are. We can get into that later, but so essentially I prepared it all. I got rid of old cards and prepared it for further processing. Like I'm going to do a number of different, I guess you could say, runs or cycles through it. And when I ended up going through this deck, I was intending on trimming it down, like to just get rid of old stuff and see what needed to be done with the deck. But I ended up almost doubling it in size, and you can see here these are all the new cards that I made. You'll see in a few seconds. But yeah, I ended up making so many new cards and new notes. So this is like almost a 500 card deck right here. So I'm gonna put that away. I just wanted to give you an idea of kind of
your obsession. Yeah.
Yeah, the level of obsession going on here. So this is what a deck will end up looking like. But first, what we need to do is bootstrap your deck. So
Gotcha.
there are a number of different, I guess you could say, game modes or modes of
Sure.
play. This what we're about to do is a cooperative mode, and it's called I don't know what it's called, bootstrapping a new deck, or like just helping somebody to make a new deck. I'm just also going to put another show off another box here. This is just a backup box of extra cards, extra colors, that kind of stuff. So good to have handy if you ever know, like you're going to be, maybe there's going to be a bunch of people playing and stuff like that. Okay, so so if you're familiar, like, so here's, I'm just gonna, I can start anywhere, like literally it's the fractal. So it doesn't matter what protocol I start with or where I start. And this has always been like the insane part of trying to express or explain this. I'm just going through a couple of the old cards here.
Have you ever played Cards Against Humanity? Is this anything like that?
No, it's not. I haven't, but it's not. Okay. Thought I had more. Okay, so what we're trying to do is start you off with a starter deck, and this so I don't have this all presented or presentable. So what I'm doing just for a second is I'm just gonna like take my time and meditate, like what should be the first thing to even present to you.
Okay.
And
While you're thinking about that, this is one of those, I kind of watch you trying to relate a very complex idea that you know is going to work, but it's like, how do I start from scratch for this individual person?
Yeah.
And, you know, in your head, it's like, oh, it's like the conversation is already done, and then you start to try to put words to your mouth, and it's like, oh.
I got one. So we're going to start off with what's called Notepad protocol. So in this case, I'm just going to ask you to, you don't have to, but copy these cards. So make a card as I make it. So what I'm making is called Notepad protocol. So in the top left, I put Notepad protocol. Okay, so now that's a card. Now we can set that aside. So what this is this says that
I feel like I should put the definition, the explanation of the card. I should just write it underneath, yeah.
Scratch pad. That's what I'm writing. So this is the ability to have a scratch pad, and in this case we're using cards as that. So technically this is a protocol, this card, but now I'm going to set one aside and say notes if I want to, or just scribble or draw things, right? So this protocol kind of enables this within the game, that I can just take a card and scribble on it, and it doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Okay, that's a second one is notes, or the notes card is just the sort of actual.
Yeah, it's the actual. So you can have one, set it aside if you don't already, which I know you doodled on one already. So so that this is making explicit something that we've already done and that we expect
Okay,
to
yeah. So
happen.
I already have kind of my notes
Hmm.
card, and then the actual playable card is over here. I gotcha.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're gonna typically have kind of an area for where you put your cards. That's why I have this all on a kind of a mat, a placemat or whatever.
Yeah, I've got a placemat, and I've got some. That's why I'm kind of at this table, so I have some space to work
Good.
with.
Yeah, and tables work like they do tend to sprawl out. Okay, so that's an example of a protocol, and what we've done now is actually replicated a protocol because now it's in your deck. So now you have a deck. So achievement unlocked. You have a deck.
Got you.
Feel
Thank you.
good about yourself.
Hey, I have to renew my Xbox Live account. All right.
Why is that?
No, because that's it's
Oh, to
like
get
your
the achievement.
achievements.
Yeah, so you can see your achievements, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so, and we were talking about this last night with my buddy, like, it feels good to have achievements. Like,
Yeah.
if this is a game, like, there should be, um, so, and also the achievement, played a game. Like, you've now played a game, no matter what happens, you have
Yeah.
played a game, right? This kind of stuff.
Right.
So achievements, that's kind of a side note there.
There, just in a very meta moment, I'm trying to imagine certain kinds of people watching this right now, and they're just going, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
There is something to be said for there's people, especially I think young dudes, who've basically been obsessed with this sort of way of interacting with reality through
Yeah.
games for so long that like. I'm like, oh, okay. And it's like it's like brush your teeth is a card and suddenly brushing your teeth makes more sense.
Wow.
You know? Like,
In my daily
it's like-
achievements.
exactly. I mean, like, but there's probably people in the world that would actually benefit from that.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely.
But I mean, that's what we're doing. I mean, you're sort of
Mhm.
bootstrapping these complex, spiritual concepts onto a card game.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And you
Okay.
always have cards. It's basic. Or even those like scraps of paper that I cut in half.
Right.
Like it
Okay.
should be available. No matter what we do technologically,
Yeah.
it should be primitive as well. That's kind of an underlying
Gotcha.
thing.
All right. So we have the one card. What's the next card?
Yep. So the next card, I'm going to give you the handshake protocol.
Handshake.
Yeah. So just write that up at the top. Handshake protocol. All right, so this one is, so I'm gonna try. Wait, I gotta change my cam back. So I'm gonna try just quickly, briefly explain it. This is the idea that there's kind of two major cases. One is so when you first
By the
meet-
way, your viewer Eon Head is asking, are you going to gamify the current situation and envelop him in the mode or in the model?
Yeah, of course.
All right. Handshake protocol. All right. When you first.
Did I miss it? So Eon's trying to message us. So I'm just going back to my desktop scene.
Yeah, it's you answered on the stream. You don't have to do it in the chat.
I'd like to though.
I can read it from where I am. Just worry about what you're doing. If someone pops up on the chat, I'll tell you.
Cool, thanks.
All right. So handshake protocol. What's the
Okay, yeah, so kind of two cases here. One is, and I wrote down, okay, I gotta change my scene back to the scene. All right, so here we go. So handshake protocol. One case here is kind of when you first meet, do the handshake protocol, and that's kind of self-explanatory. You don't know at all like this other person, and you want to get to know them better. And then the other is when you reconnect. So the idea of this is that as you go as you interact socially, as you go about your day and all that kind of stuff, you kind of drift from other people. You have to recurringly kind of bring your peers up to speed with what you're working on and like your latest copy of the deck. Like your own deck is going to keep going. It's going to keep updating to your situation, your context, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of the handshake protocol is basically to, at least that it's the most basic premise of that. Basically, you're connecting together. You're connecting together and updating each other. That's the premise behind handshake protocol.
Okay.
So you could say we are executing it right now. You could say we are this card is in play right now. Like it's active. And
just on
yeah.
Basically, it's almost like a diff, right? Like it's your
Yes.
situational diff from what your last working status was last time you were together.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can see there's a big diff here. Looking at the stack, my deck stack.
Right.
Like, not that we have to compare.
So would you say it's kind of like conveying the shape of the diff rather than you don't? Would you have to go through the entire deck and explain all the differences, or are you just saying in general you just want to kind of give a shape of the difference between the two states?
Yeah, it's in context. So there's only going to be a small portion of my personal deck that's really like kind of that I think is critical for you or whatever. And that off the bat is the core. It's the core protocol. So that's what I'm trying to convey right now.
Okay.
So yeah, that's basically it for handshake protocol. Get up to speed. Getting up to speed. And there's kind of another facet of Notepad protocol, which I don't know if I can write it down or if I can just explain it quickly, but it's that these cards, even though I'm marking them as protocol, they don't have to be coherently written as like a heuristic expression or something like that, like behaviors being triggered by some object in your environment, that kind of stuff. You can start off with a very low resolution idea of any card that simply reminds you to come back and develop that.
Okay.
So to increase its coherence later. So that's kind of to get you off the hook of it has to be perfect.
Okay.
And you just need to remind yourself, like that's what it's about. You're just writing stuff down. Okay, so handshake protocol. So that's what we're doing right now. I'm just thinking any others. Where should we go from there? Okay, I'm going to again, I don't know exactly how to present this, but I'm just going to introduce a type of card, you could say. And this is to kind of just quickly boost or broaden or bootstrap your idea of what this game can be used for cooperatively. Yep. So I'm going to, and I could write this down as, let's say, the project protocol. But what I want to do actually is create a new card, and it is going to represent a project. So it's, in other words, hyperstitional in that I am envisioning an object that maybe doesn't yet exist, but I'm embodying it now so that it within the future, it does exist. So let's just, what would be, so I'm just going to put, I'm going to call it the game. Do I need to, and I'm going to just say project. So up top, usually I reserve and this would be another protocol, but I don't want to write it down. Up top, I would usually reserve for title and meta type information, especially the top left of any card.
Okay.
So, trying to think of any details of this, but there doesn't even necessarily need to be details. So this is the game that we're developing and playing right now.
Right.
And because I created this card.
I see you struggling with having the meta idea in your mind and at the same time describing from an abstract that meta. It's like, I think you're, if I could just sort of like judge what's going on at the moment, I'm kind of watching you struggle to exist in like multiple meta places at the same time.
Yeah.
You're literally trying to meta consider your meta understanding of a meta concept. Like, it's so weird.
It's
Like,
crazy,
I'm watching
man.
you kind of
I'm
churn
telling
and
you.
you're like, how am I doing this? Like, I'm sort of waiting to see how it all fits together, so I'm just sort of like sitting back and letting you kind of process. It's good.
So I'll just keep throwing things out there.
I have one of the things just to sort of like, in general, I have extroverted intuition. Like, I think much better when there's a person for me to, to put it kindly to me, maybe talk at.
Yeah.
But more, and so when these things are kind of circling around in my mind, they sound perfectly coherent. And then when I try to relate them in a general sense to a, potential audience, it sounds like nonsense.
I'm feeling
that. If there's a person there where I'm developing the idea with, I think the expression comes up much more coherently.
It helps.
So I'm sort of watching you go through a version of that.
Yes.
But it's especially like looking into a mirror for you, because you're like, okay, so we have a card that's about the game, that we're making this game, and it's okay. I kind of get what you're going. It's cool. You can go on. We can just kind of move on to the next one.
So I'm gonna try
this game itself that we are. I think the problem is your project that you chose. I think you might have chosen a bad idea, because you chose the actual reality that we're in to talk. So you basically created an infinite loop. And you're like, how do I describe this thing in an infinite loop? So
welcome to the game.
Right. Well, but what we're doing, this thing that we've just experienced is very helpful, because we've just illustrated this idea of getting caught in an infinite loop. Because part of what you and I are experiencing and going through and trying to relate to other people is this special understanding of meta. It's this kind of like being in the reality of describing the reality that you're in. And not everyone can do this. This is something that some people call a disease. One of the things we're doing is trying to help people who have this ability, and I use that word kindly, to help get ourselves out of this. So what we're basically doing is kind of like restructuring our brains, and you're writing a game to write yourself out of this moment. But what you've done is you've made the mistake of creating an example of creating the example in this moment, and just like a computer getting caught in an infinite loop, you just got caught in an infinite loop. So maybe, might I suggest, picking another kind of project that we're not working on now as the example to maybe replace
this actually...
Okay, let's actually take this card and just put it in the deck that we just did. Let's go to a new card and now give me another external project as an example.
That would be like rolling forward, like as fast as we can. So let's change gears, and I'm gonna try and just keep going. This actually brought up like what the whole problem that you're talking about. So we have a protocol for that. So that's obviously the next thing. So what I'm going to do with this game project is I'm just going to write me, and I'm just putting whatever data I feel like. Wait, because I'm going to switch my scene. I'm going to put me and Corey. So that's you, and I'm just whatever. So this is a little tiny piece of data that I'm putting on the card. Because it basically acts as a notepad anyway. So I'm being reminded something about this project, the game that we're playing, in that there's kind of you and me are both doing something about this project. So we can set that aside. This card now represents, or is supposed to represent, something that we're working on. So when we're flipping through our deck later on, at any time, if we kept this card in our deck, we're going to be reminded, oh yeah, I was doing that project. Is there something I can do about that now? So yeah, moving on. I'm going to put this, where can I put this? So I'm just going to put it right on top of that notepad protocol.
By the way, Eon says, reminds me of the tolerance of non-birth.
Yeah.
Do you know what, can you explain that? Should I Google that? I'm gonna Google it. You go on to your next thing.
I mean, it's bringing up a bunch of things, but
No, don't. I've made a mistake. Don't get derailed. Go on to your
okay,
next thing.
okay. So
It says,
right,
so for the people who are watching, the tolerance of non-birth from the Chinese Buddhists. It's like, you keep going on to your thing, pick up your card, figure out what you're going to do. I'm going to read this.
I know what I'm gonna do. Yeah,
Tolerance insight that comes from the knowledge that all phenomena are unborn, sometimes translated as insight into the non-organization of all. Yes, insight into the non-organization of all existence /
yes,
non-organization of the dharmas.
yeah,
Mayahana Buddhist term for the insight into emptiness, the
yep,
non-origination or birthlessness of things being realized by the Bodhisattvas who have attained the 8th stage or path to Buddhahood.
yep,
Yeah. You're
yeah.
right. It's the
That's great.
contemplation of non-context of everything, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Hmm.
So Eon is right on the money there, and
Yeah.
this is very well related to the next protocol I'm going to bring up. I'm just going to name it for you. It's called the Strike Point Protocol. Strike Point Protocol.
Anne
Yep.
says it's the discomfort of realizing this situation and wanting to do something else, reincarnation as a choice. Gotcha. And okay, so strike point protocol is the next
Interesting.
one.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, so I'm just gonna try and introduce this if I can.
Okay.
And this is related to emptiness as well. This whole web of meaning, like let's say we're trying to have a whole web of protocols. When you're dealing with something that is strictly or whatever, like non-linear, like I'm not trying to program you, for example, with a certain step, this step after step after step. What I'm trying to do, and this is part of the Strike Point Protocol, is paint a picture of different facets, and then you see the whole together, and you see the dynamic functioning between the parts, right? And this
Okay.
is related to systems theory, I guess. That's kind of what it reminds me of.
Okay.
And very much emptiness, the concept of emptiness. And so what I mean by that is, let's say I try to define strike point protocol even. We'll start right here. As soon as I start talking about it, of what strike point protocol is, I'm going to end up talking about other things that are not strike point protocol, because you cannot talk about something in and of itself. You can
Okay.
only talk about the kind
Right.
of the
You can't use the existing thing for context on itself.
you can talk about the environment that surrounds and environment of relations. So I'll just using this as notepad area. So let's say this is our strike point, is this kind of symbol thing or whatever here. As soon as I start talking about it, I'm gonna like pull up a bunch of different concepts in this constellation and how they all relate to that thing. So this is like Indra's net type of thing, the idea of that, or if you can imagine like glass mirrors, like an empty universe, black space full of just glass balls, glass spheres. So any sphere you look at, you're only ever actually seeing the reflection of other spheres. So it's like
Right.
a house of mirrors kind of thing.
Okay.
And so this is kind of one of the biggest challenges of navigating this type of a space. If you want to talk about a system, effectively, you end up having to talk about not directly what you want to talk about, but you talk about all the things around it and how they relate to it. So in other words, if strike point is a type of object in programming, these other things would be the properties. And
Okay.
the properties of
Try
that
to
type.
not. Okay, we're caught in the meta again. Try
Yep.
not to use the idea of strike point. I mean, unless you're trying to demonstrate the thing, and you're literally trying to use the thing you're trying to explain it. And I think that might be happening
Okay.
intentionally,
Okay.
but
Here,
try
let
not
me.
to use strike point protocol to describe strike point protocol.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me put this into context that we're already doing right now. So, our strike point right now is the game. This is what we're trying to do, the game. So, instead of creating a card for you called the game, and trying to do that, what I've done is I started out with Notepad protocol, and then I went to handshake protocol, and then I went to strike point protocol, and I'm going to keep carrying on to different things until the game shapes up for you. And that's what strike point is. That's what it does. That's what it solves.
Okay, so strike point, so if I'm going to try and now repeat back the thing that I think that this is, it is the assembling of various attributes to help describe something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So is it specifically in terms of the game that we're playing, am I bringing in different index cards? Like, is it something that basically is saying I'm going to be using different cards to describe something that does not have its own card?
I suppose, but I guess ideally that thing would have its own card, but and this, like, yeah, if this is why it took me years to even, and where I thought I could express it but couldn't. It's because this kind of stuff happens. So let me see if I can carry on. Wait, I'm gonna cheat and go to the Portal Mountain wiki, and I'm gonna pull up core protocols. Okay, so I might as well do that. Show that in OBS. So
I might have to relocate.
Sure.
Yeah, give me a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, you might think about doing something while I'm relocating.
Yeah,
to a
no
different
problem.
place.
Take your time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm loud.
Can you still hear me though?
Yep, I can hear you fine.
Okay.
I'm literally picking up my laptop and moving everything, so.
Yeah, cool.
Hold on.
All right, so what have we do here? So I'm going to see if I can find that first off Notepad protocol. Did I do Notepad area? No. I guess I don't, so I don't have Notepad protocol articulated yet. Next one, handshake. Was it called that? No. Okay, so none of these are in my database yet on the wiki, which is interesting. Strike point for sure. Strike point. Okay, so on the wiki here, I believe that any viewers can probably see my, see my web browser. So I have a whole bunch of protocols, and they are grouped. They're kind of clumped together into different sections, and each section is what I call a strike point domain. Okay. So it's somewhat arbitrary what the bounds of that domain are.
Hold on just a second. Let
yep.
me finish. I'm almost done moving.
Sure.
Because I can't look at the screen that you're showing me.
Yeah. No problem.
Okay. All right. I'm plugged in. Nearly had a mess. All right. Okay.
Nice.
Okay.
Cool.
Yep.
So, let me just continue by saying, what we have done so far, you and I connecting right now, doing this kind of handshake process of getting kind of up to date on what's going on. We've seen a similar process happen in the Portal Mountain lobby, and it's like where someone joins, you say, "Hey, welcome," and then you introduce them. So how that goes is there's no standard program exactly for that. You're connecting with the other person, trying to find out where they're at, and then presenting these kind of one concept after another, like just introducing ideas,
Uh-huh.
until they can navigate a system better, or in other words, until they can navigate an area of behavior or a domain of
Right.
behavior. And this is kind of underlying what this card game system is about, is
Okay.
to facilitate or augment the convergence of behavior. And that's not meant in a authoritarian top-down way. It's meant in a intentional, you're sharing with your neighbor how to cooperate, how to do something. It's kind of taking that angle. And there's another protocol, I don't know if I should mention it, maybe I won't, but very soon, very shortly I will. So can you see my screen again?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm on a delay, so I see this sort of like.
Right. Yeah, I see. Okay, so I'm just scrolling through the wiki right now, and there's different sections here. Each one is a strike point domain, and as I was saying, it's kind of arbitrary as to what I put in what domain. But what it is it's like depending on the context, you go through an arc. So everybody who's joined the Portal Mountain lobby has had their own unique arc, you could say. So the concepts were presented to them in a slightly unique way or whatever. And that's kind of how these came about. So we have different domains here. One is the core. That's what we're trying to do right now. I'm trying to articulate the core right now. And so I would call this the core strike point domain, or I would say that's what we're doing, is we are exploring the core domain.
Okay, so
Yeah.
within the concept of strike point, core, all of these are attributes of the strike point protocol. Like the domains are within the concept of strike point, right? Like, so local proximity DAC database, like it kind of, the picture of this is all looping on itself in my mind, so I'm trying to kind of like get the picture.
Yep. It's like an arbitrary collection, kind of. So like, and again, the strike point. So like, let's say if we go to a woodworking shop, and suddenly, I want to teach you how to build a box or something like that.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, our strike point is now like, we're coming online, we're going to do this thing. Our strike point is building a box, right?
Okay.
And so from there, I'm going to teach you a number of different concepts, starting with basic tools and materials and this kind of stuff. And I'm going to keep hopping around until you get a picture and you're able to operate within that environment.
Okay, so in this case, the strike point protocol is the process of building a box.
Yeah.
And so then the picture you kind of drew of the different spheres reflecting themselves, are all of the different domains, is maybe not the right word, of the aspects of the process of going through to build the box.
Yes. So each tool would potentially be its own like sphere in that. So
this is the arrangement of, I'm trying to kind of boil this down to a descriptor.
Yep.
This is the arrangement of attributes, is what I kind of want to say. Attributes, and because it's like, attributes are information, but it's also processes, right? And processes aren't attributes. So maybe so you've got core, like local proximity of it's cascading insanity.
Yeah.
Hold on. So it's the arrangement of attributes and processes required to show the shape of something, basically, required
Of an
to
environment.
relate, required to describe, I think, maybe.
Yep. For the purpose of behavior in an environment. And this is kind of just very constrained. That's kind of the idea. So like, and this is a great introduction as well to the glass bead game, and that's why that metaphor works so well. So you could say, let's say we walk into a shop, and we're going to do this thing, and I'm like, okay, our strike point is building this box. I reach into my pocket and pull out a bunch of glass beads, or like marbles, and just lay them on the table, right? So, and then each one of these marbles is representing another element of that environment. Now here's the crazy loopy part. Like, if I want tell you about a bandsaw and how that works. Well, from the perspective of making a box, it has only a certain limited context of what that bandsaw is going to be used for. But as far as like the bandsaw itself, it could be its own strike point, and everything around it could be described in relation to the bandsaw. Like, let's say you've got a bottle of oil.
Yes.
You got a little oil
So
bottle.
some of the aspects of the strike point protocol, some of the attributes or processes can themselves be at the center of their own strike
Yes.
point protocol.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
okay.
this is navigating the cloud of glass beads, if you will. And that's the crazy thing that makes it loopy.
So is the strike point protocol the navigation of the cloud?
Yes.
Or is it the individual node of the cloud?
So strike point protocol is about trying to relay or connect to somebody with somebody else. And what you're doing is you're laying out.
It's just connecting all of the aspects you need to convey an idea or action to another individual.
Yeah. So when I think make a box, what pops up in my head is like, boom, I see like the whole, like the hyperstition of it. Like the box is in my head, but it's also in reality in the future, right? That whole thing is there, right? And so that whole thing is
that's the thing, that all of the glass at the center of all of those glass beads, that future existing box is the thing that all of the descriptors and processes are pointing at in the future in space-time.
In this context, yes, that's hyperstition.
Yay, it's possible. Like, I feel like we actually communicated something. Okay. Woo! Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So strike point is about allowing that.
Okay, so here's moving forward.
Yes.
When you're explaining
keep going.
to someone,
Keep going.
I would start from the target. I would say it's envisioning something, an aspect of space-time, because space-time is both the location in time and the descriptor of a thing. It's imagining the target in space-time and all of the related properties, ideas, and processes required to bridge this place in space-time to the existence of that thing in space-time. Yeah. Roughly.
Yep.
Right.
That's
I'm
also
trying to
a
give you a
project.
way to relate this to people, and boil it down.
Yep. And we could have started with strike point. We could have said, like, I have this idea of a game and we're going to be playing it in the future. But first I
think you were trying to do this. You were trying to say the game is a strike point, and it's like, here, let me just show you infinity. Figure it out. But yeah, okay, so the game itself is a strike point. Now it loops back. Okay.
Yeah.
So let me just let me kind of dwell on this for a minute, because part of the communication process is sort of like this communication and then repeating it, and obviously we're kind of coming from different places, but I think for people who aren't kind of hip to the idea that this is a physical process, like there is another place in existence in space. And so let's back it up. Okay, so we are 77 minutes into the video. This is the point, roughly around the 76-minute mark. Corey finally clicked. Okay, this is what the strike point is. So back then, when you were trying to relate both the game card and the strike point card, you were looking forward to the 76-minute mark in the video, where Corey clicked into the idea of all of these things. And you, therefore, in a meta way, demonstrated the strike point where we've got, and you can add the things that we already knew to the strike point, like all of the vernacular and concepts that we brought into that moment are part of the strike point, even if we didn't implicitly talk about them in that moment. This is the acknowledgement that to get to this moment, the 76-minute in timeline in this particular video, that we were going to have to communicate all of these attributes, some of which would have to be explained and related, some of which already were in existence, but the descriptor of all of the things that it's going to take to get to this place in space-time where that connection happened, that is the strike point protocol. Yep,
to make it happen. And just for your reference, there's this is what I call the arc. So how I describe it is strike point makes this cloud, and the arc is like a lightning bolt. which travels through all those things, and it's like that.
I know this is weird, but I need like a minute to like write this down on paper.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, I don't know if that's muted and you want to keep talking to people. I think
Yeah, no.
anybody who's watching this weirdo stream at this point isn't going to care if there's a couple of
No. I have to take a quick washroom break anyways. So
all right.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, it's fine.
Cool.
All right. I'm almost there.
Hello.
Hold on just 1 second.
Yeah.
And actions ? Required to move to that position or outcome. Okay, so here's how I wrote this down.
Sorry, one sec.
Close. I'm sorry?
Battery is low. All good? Go ahead.
So, a real desired outcome of connection in space-time as a goal. The transmission of a concept or the production of an object or item or tangible thing, and all of the connected ideas and actions required to move to that position of outcome.
Right. This is kind of tainted with that hyperstition aspect to it, which isn't like there are different types of strike points or different uses for it. You see it everywhere, but this idea.
But right now, if there's different modes of it, that's not important. What's important is that I find a descriptor that fits all.
You got it. Yeah, you got it. And I
that's
think
all. I just want to make sure that before we move on to different modal applications protocol, that I can create a boiled down, this fits all modes and aspects and mods of that thing.
Yep.
So, and I noticed that Eon had a comment that is, remember, it's provisional. It's connecting to someone. Okay. So part of the strike point protocol is there is another. Can you be alone in? You can be alone. You can play by yourself. But if there's another person there who you're going to build the box with or transmit the item to, there's connecting to someone else requires a coherence level high enough to operate skillfully. So in other words, it's just like a basic requirement that your partner in the process, that's kind of like a subline of the strike point protocol, right? Like it's like your minimum requirements when you're looking at a piece of software. Like if you're going to achieve this thing and you have a partner in this process, they actually have to have the core ability to exist in that place in space-time at the end of this process with you, right? I guess is that kind of what...
Yeah, it's like dependencies that, like you said, we have all these kind of pre-existing knowledge, so to speak. Like we're already close.
Hold on. Let me use that word. All of the connected dependencies, ideas and actions, parentheses, dependencies, required to move to that position of outcome. So this is one of the interesting things as a sort of meta comment for this moment for us, is that the idea of positions in space-time and really internalizing the idea that space and time really are the same thing, right? Like we can talk about that in a lot of different
Yeah,
ways and
yeah,
people
yeah, yeah,
kind
yeah.
of get it, but this is what that looks like. It's
Mm-hmm.
we are navigating to a different place, a coordinate set in space-time where we are on the other side of that location, having connected through an idea or created an item. And what we're doing is drawing a map through abstract ideas as well as physical processes to get to that place.
Yeah.
But did
Sorry,
you
I'm
bring someone else
just
into the
writing down.
conversation?
Well, I invited Jenya just to see if it'll work. I don't know, just for
Cool.
fun.
Yeah. Awesome.
It's already kind of crowded in here, but
No. I think that, I mean, I don't know. I feel like that was
oh, he
actually
joined.
useful. Yeah.
He did
Yeah.
join it.
Do you
Cool.
want to
Can
say
I?
hi and introduce and do a introduction?
Oh, there he is.
That's me
There's
and Shannon from Portal Mountain. I
from Portal Mountain.
Howdy.
have a lot invested in that side of things, so I was following the discussion quite closely, which I got to sit around to. So,
You're just a little quiet, but it's okay. So yeah, Jenny and I have developed a lot of this model
I'm gonna put my
together.
headset on soon. So
Oh yeah,
give me a moment.
good call. Nice. Yeah, cool. So we've been working very steadily for the last 2 years together on this stuff, Jenny and I. Yeah, so I wanted to just bring this in, the existing kind of ideas about strike point. So you have the cloud. That's what we've already kind of gone over, the idea of that collection of glass beads or whatever, if you will, and then an arc. And the arc is that so in the case of hyperstation, like where I had showed you this idea of building a box, and in my head I could see all the tools and actions that had to go on for that box to come into existence, right? Are you with me?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's my own arc. So that me seeing this vision of something through time and then a box being created is an arc that's within my cloud. The point of strike point protocol, or another way of saying this, is to create a cloud in someone else's head so that a similar arc can manifest or can appear and like a
Okay.
lightning bolt strike through their mind, their neural net as well.
Okay. So this is sort of a secondary. I've already filled up the entire card. Okay.
There's
So you
always
know
the
what?
back.
This is, to me, this is sort of like, it's a secondary aspect of strike point protocol. Okay. So
Sure.
because the strike point protocol is the abstract idea of the destination, you're talking about something different. You're talking about the relationship of the person who envisions
Yep.
the strike point, and then the relationship of that to someone else. That's a different thing. The strike point is the core, and then you're talking about a relationship between you, the system that is Brian, and the connection to this, and then you're talking about relating this to another individual.
Yes. Yeah.
So those are
Yeah.
actually three things, I would say.
I think
but
you're
I mean,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
I can call it strike point dot, like as far as, I'll just say strike point dot, POV or whatever. I mean, would you have a way of describing that?
I'm not sure, but I mean, you're right
Strike
though.
point dot arc. You called it an arc. So I'm just going to call it a strike point arc. And that is the envisioning. You see what I'm saying? Like you have to actually map out these things as separate entities. To relate this concept to someone. So I think, in the meta, we're trying to take this thing that's in your head and relate it to people who don't already have this overlay of a particular view of reality. And so in order to do that, we have to kind of break it down to its most easily explained. I mean, understanding that the vast number of the population is still not going to be able to understand this, but
You're right.
envisioning so the strike point art is envisioning a strike point from the perception of its, and the person who imagines it for the first time. Like where how would you describe that? From envisioning a strike point to be related? Is the arc, or is the arc just is that it? Is it stop? Is it envisioning a strike point? So there's one arc, there's the transmitter's strike point arc, and then there's the receiver strike point arc, and you're talking about the
Yes.
process of
Yes.
aligning strike points, right?
Not as if it's an exact replication, but that
No,
that
it's a
the
transmission,
environment,
yeah.
yeah, the environment is there for these lightning strikes to happen.
When we're drawing the shape of this, there's the implication that the person that you're relating it to is, by transmitting the strike point, the arc is itself going to be built. It's a custom arc every time. So like you're relating the strike points so that they can then build that arc, but that arc will draw upon their position in space time
Yes.
up to and including everything they
Exactly.
know at that
Yep.
moment and
Mhm.
everything that they don't know. Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
And
this is exciting.
yes,
I
their
like
unique
it.
position in the whole
Correct.
thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So to to kind of anchor that one little bit more, there, in the context of strike point protocol, it's used in a way that, of course, you're expressing it to somebody, like, and these things happen internally, like clouds become developed and built,
Oh,
and then you have
hold on.
arcs.
You're saying, I'm sorry, let's break this down one idea at a time.
Yep.
Why is it implicit that you're expressing it to someone? In other words, why can't you have an internally generated strike point that's just
Yes.
knowable to you?
You can and do. So you're sitting there in this cloud and you're seeing all these arcs of lightning everywhere, and those are
Well,
representing
so your
visions.
strike point dot target could be self, right? Or it could be external. But if your strike point, there's a different implication if your strike point target is self versus your strike target being a separate entity.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
yes.
So, and let's say you're teaching yourself something. So you have this object, I want to be able to make a box, but there's no one there to teach you. So you have this, that's, let's say, a strike point arc. You envision it, but you can't see the whole hyperstation. You don't see how it all works together. So you go
Right.
about practicing, experimenting, and you fill in the cloud until the arcs happen and you actually see a box in front of you.
Right.
Kind of
Okay.
thing.
What is there a process? It seems like that should be part of it too. The process of populating the cloud with all of the things required to move towards that position in space-time.
Yeah. This is basically feedback protocol, which is like the scientific method of experimentation in a domain of behavior. That's it.
Hold on, I need a second.
Okay.
And it's because I haven't finished the, I feel like my
Yeah.
brain is still my brain is still on the targeting of the strike point in terms of the relationship to self versus something you're communicating.
Right.
And so like I'm just making sure that I sort of like document this as I go along.
If I can just take a half minute to monologue or whatever here.
Yeah, do it.
If you don't mind. So hopefully it'll clear things up a little bit. So this cloud picture, this collection of glass beads or whatever, all self-reflecting, this is kind of how, I guess I'm claiming this is kind of how perception works anyways. So we're already seeing these different object types in different environments, and our imagination is already going ahead of us and envisioning potential futures using our material, our cloud material, to try and solve problems and see how can we do one thing or another. So no matter what, throughout life, by default, I'm kind of saying that these arcs are already happening. It's kind of when you're like, aha, I see how that problem can be fixed. That's wonderful. But it's not a linear thing. You just tell somebody to do something and it gets fixed. It's a systems way of thinking about something. So the problem
and there's the absence, right, so there's a positive and negative aspect to the connection between your position and the desired outcome or strike point. And so, yeah, the knowledge of things or the lack of knowledge of things are two, are kind of the things that connect you to that point.
It's something you're always navigating. And
right.
Yeah, so the idea is that there's this problem of meaning, in that we each have our own experiences and all this kind of stuff, our own perspective. But within I guess I'll call it a problem domain, You see the system's way of thinking, you see the elements that are at play and how they relate to each other. And so if you see a solution internally, the only way to properly relate this to somebody is with something like the strike point protocol, which says, I have these aha moments and these ideas and these narrative arcs of something being put together, and I see it clearly inside of me, but somebody else does not see that, and they may have parts of their cloud are missing. And so that's kind of the purpose of strike point protocol. Is it's this, when you're teaching or trying to share behavior, you're trying to share a model. You're not instructing somebody like do this, this, and that. In what we're trying to when we're talking about deeply understanding something, understanding a system, we're talking about finding out the elements. So you have to relay this, and this is the strike point. Another word for it is circumambulation, which Zumi likes to use, and that's what that just means, to hop from point to point, painting a picture. So this is right brain type stuff.
On circumambulation.
Yeah. So this is right brain thinking, and that's the problem with interfacing with a rational type of thing, where you want linear expression telling you what's what.
Okay,
it's not that simple.
I come from a background of 3D animation, and there's many different technologies of rendering, and so you've got all your wireframes, and you apply all of these attributes and shaders to something, and then you send this into the renderer, and they have hardware renderers and software renderers, and then the order and the way that it takes these three-dimensional models and code and renders them into pixels is very different. And some renderers do a pass where it's like they do a fuzzy pass and a fuzzy pass and a fuzzy pass, and it gets sharper and sharper and sharper. And other renders kind of like draw out the shapes very clearly, in order,
right?
Depending on how they're sort of processing the buffer. So I think that there's like a good analogy there. It's sort of the right brain versus logical way of kind of approaching rendering. That
interesting outcome. Yeah, so the right brain wants to see the whole picture at once if possible, and that's where you kind of peck around all these little spots and make a picture. Yeah,
I masquerade as a left brain person to certain people, but clearly I'm a right brain person.
Just not to put too fine a point on left brain, right brain. We're not talking about physical right and left, right?
Yes, right. we understand that. That's
I just wanted to make sure for my own triggeriness.
Yes, you're getting triggered. Boy, you are. Yes. Man, yeah. Very metaphorical here.
Yep. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So we have pretty much a strike point protocol card now, kind of, and we've linked up on that.
I have 3 of them, but yeah, it's okay.
Sure. I mean, that's how there's a protocol for that, but we don't need to get into it.
Yeah. I gotcha. Okay.
Okay. So I'm trying to think, like, probably we can probably move on to maybe another card.
Yep. Sure.
So strike point, that's kind of what we're doing here. So we're just hopping from protocol to protocol. We've got Notepad so far, the handshake, as well as strike point. And what should be next? So I'm gonna just pull up that back to OBS for a second. I'm just gonna pull up the wiki. Okay, we're already sharing desktop, are we? Yes. Portal Mountain. Okay. So core protocol, feedback protocol. Okay, so this is deeply related. What I wanted to get into is called Bootstrap Protocol. So please, if you would, create a new card.
Yep.
Bootstrap Protocol. Okay, and I think we already got into this a little bit. I'll just see if I can give a tidbit and maybe it'll make sense to you. So bootstrapping is the idea of taking instructions or outside information and using it to start up an internal process where you know and understand what's going on. So the shop example, if I keep telling you, like, if this happens, then do that, or then take this and do that. Like instructions, you're going to kind of follow it blindly based on trust, right?
Okay.
And that's Bootstrap requires trust.
Okay. So it is a kind of a contextless set of instructions, just raw instructions.
So Bootstrap itself is, let's see. So what you're doing is you're performing an experiment. So you're taking.
By the way,
model.
Eon says, just my interpretation, the game itself is a strike point, and the strike point card is a strike point. The arc is a fractal between strike points. I'm down with that. I mean, and really, you can look at yourself as a constantly evolving strike point if you really want to be annoying about it.
Sure, and the arcs are just like, there's so many arcs, and they just keep flashing. They just flash away and away.
Yeah.
So Bootstrap protocol requires trust. That's a note.
Because it requires trust because you're just going to execute. You're going to execute instructions. And the very act of executing instructions changes something, and so therefore, if you're going to do that, you're going to want to make sure the source of those instructions is trusted.
Right, or you have some intuition about it or whatever. You either trust the person or you've seen enough of that thing to kind of jump in.
Blindly is probably a too extreme way of looking at it. It's not necessarily blindly, but it's kind of blindly. Execute instructions, would you say blindly?
In a sense, yes, but you're supposed to always be there, like, self-aware about it, obviously. You know, like, and okay, so here's the, and I don't know if I need to get, or should get into feedback protocol first. It's heavily related. So, and Zhenya will probably chime in on this one too, but, so I'm starting up a new card. Sorry, these are too closely related. A new card called...
So I'm working on currently the Bootstrap protocol card and also the feedback.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so feedback protocol. Take a model and experiment with it.
That's the feedback protocol, is take a model and experiment with it?
Yes. And then...
Define model.
So... So, in the case of protocols, in the case of having a bunch of protocols, what they are doing is taking care of constraints within a system so that system doesn't collapse or explode or whatever. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of, the idea of a protocol is it's a certain heuristic actions. Like when you see something happening wrong, take an action. That's a protocol, kind of. So a collection of protocols is trying to...
Well, a protocol, wait a minute, hold on. A protocol is a translation. It's a descriptor, a way of interpreting something, right? Like, or it is both an action sometimes and also a descriptor, yeah?
Probably kind of lost
like a
me there a bit.
spec.
Yeah, spec, okay, cool.
You were trying to get into what model is, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So model it's a set of abstractions that get you from your hyperstitious point to your actual. Right? It's that set of it's the full set. And it's more like it as far as a visualization goes, a more useful visualization compared to, say, a protocol. Protocol you can think of as something that's kind of active, participates in an action kind of a thing, or active, whereas the model is like a static view of things.
Okay.
It's like to take the idea of things moving in space through time and then turn it into space time.
Okay. Got you.
Right.
Okay. So a model, just in a general sense, a model is static. It's a static picture. All right. And a protocol implies change. It implies movement. It implies, yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this is also getting into triad protocol, which I didn't want to have to even bring
Hold
that up.
on. Don't do, we have two open protocols
I
right now.
know,
Do
it's
not
like...
bring up a third.
Well, he already did implicitly anyway. The entire strike point with the cloud and all of that. That's
Yeah.
just that's the same thing. If you think about Nexus, Brian, the whole Nexus idea, the unit, the transference,
Yep.
and all of that, and all of these. You know what I'm discussing here, right, Brian?
Yeah, the holonic
Yeah. Yeah. So
structure.
if you, that's the same picture, it's just using slightly different words to describe it.
Yeah. So if we can get back to that, what is the model? It's basically like the abstract. Like you're right about that, Corey, in that it's kind of static, it's semi-static, in that it needs to be updated as new information comes in.
Okay.
Your model of the world has to be updated.
Right, but when you're looking at it as its own concept, it is a static concept, and the protocols or other things outside of it might update the model, but the model itself, as a given entity, is static.
Yeah. Are you familiar with programming at all?
Okay, so I'm a CS dropout. So 25 years ago, I did scripting and stuff for CD-ROMs back in the day.
That should
then
be
I,
enough.
Then I
That
moved
should
into video production. So
totally
yeah.
should.
I mean, I know variables, procedures, functions.
So it
data
should totally be
structures.
enough to give the picture I want to give. So if you look at the model as the code, the written like files,
Yeah.
versus say the process itself is the running of it.
Right.
Right. It's already it's already running away,
Yeah.
and then protocol would be the constituents of what's running, right? Like the decision making processes. Like so.
Hold on. Back up again, because I there's a lot going on right now. So let me write that.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the three. Say that again.
So I think I can even simplify it. So you have like the version of what's written, right? Like the actual written down text, you could say. You have the execution of this text.
Are we describing a model now? What do you hold on.
I'm trying to describe a few relationships so you can understand model better in its context.
Okay.
So you have an execution of that.
So you're talking about like an actual CPU in runtime executing code?
Yeah. Like
okay, so it's runtime execution.
Runtime execution, and then you have within that runtime execution the sort of embodiment of these protocols that say, if this happens, do that. If that happens, do this. Like how the building of the thing is happening in and of itself. So the details of the code.
How is that different than the code itself? What's
so the detail of the code would be like the spec to which the code was written.
Okay, so like the language almost, like
so
what?
No. So let's say HTTP, like
right.
The protocol.
Right.
The actual protocol exists on paper. Right. But you have web servers, you have web browsers that utilize. Those are the actual. That's the actual code.
Right.
So that's the separation we make from protocol, which is like a kind of like a more of a different kind of an abstraction versus the program. And then the program in this case, the files and whatnot, is the model in all of this. So it behaves and I'm talking about the static code files themselves. That's what I'm talking about as the model. That's the structural thing. Now. The context in which I want to bring that up is that part of running that code in the first place has this feedback situation happening where it modifies what's written. Right.
Oh, like so as a variable, when you have an input from, like you're taking inputs from I/O or whatever.
Yeah, it sees its own. It sees itself as data, just as like we would see it as data. It's kind of like this weird situation happening. So that's the main relationship between all of these components and how to understand them better together.
Okay. Okay.
Nice.
I hope that worked.
Well, we'll see when we get into the concept that we're building on. We'll see if that's stuck and I can synthesize. It's all about synthesis, right? Like
Nice.
I'm building this all, and I'm like, okay, can I then synthesize and repeat this back in your language?
The fact that you were mentioning how it's looping all back into itself is very very much should be part of it. So
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so I'll get back to the basic idea of the feedback protocol, and Jenny, I'm sure you'll hop in all over this one, because
I'll
this
try
is
to actually give it to you as much as possible.
this is one of the core, if not the core protocols. So it's a process that should always be happening. When you have a model of reality, so to speak, in your mind, the process that's happening is when you go to interact with an environment and you have that model in your mind, and that's the model you're utilizing, what you do is you take feedback from the environment, from what worked and what didn't work. And
Are we talking like machine learning? Is this code that's rewriting itself, basically?
Well, us too, I guess. Biologically speaking.
This is what we do. We're
Right. Yeah.
So we get better at a behavior in a particular environment domain, and that's what
we see
feedback.
it as pleasure and pain or something usually.
Yeah, so you'll feel it. You wouldn't say it's pain necessarily. Some certain things.
Well, I mean, just in a generalized, abstracted way, this is basically I/O, right? Like it's just system I/O, and when you're running your code in execution based on your I/O, whether it's keyboard input or you have a sensor connected to it or whatever, that then revises the sort of working model of the code that is being executed. Is that what you're basically saying?
Yeah, I think so. And one kind of point here is that there's core code, like this feedback process itself, which is to some extent maybe not going to be modified. Like it's inherent to life that you feel pain and you think, oh, what did I do wrong? Like it just happens, and then you think next time I'll do better because you figure out maybe an idea of where you went wrong.
And just to point out that pain and pleasure here are also kind of like abstract terms. They're not meant to be like taken at face value.
Okay.
I just we haven't thought up of any better ones so far.
Sure.
But it's basically
it's the affective,
idea,
right?
The idea of proceed or the idea of something to do not proceed.
Well, it's success or failure given a different context. It's like there's two aspects to it, right? Like you have your context and then succeed or fail, and then if you have a way to say how much succeed or fail, that's a way of sort of breaking down in a very generic way, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it, actually.
Okay, perfect. See, I'm here for something.
All
right, so I'm going to write this
awesome.
as a context plus, I want to write it in a way that I know I'm going to remember it inherently the next time. Plus, so feedback is sort of is basically what it is, but it is, so it's success or failure, and then to what degree failure.
It's more like a gradient, I would say.
Yeah.
Because there's so many elements that can go good.
How many bits of resolution on this is what I'm asking. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but it's also, it has a discreteness to it in that there's thresholds in the gradient, so you'll have a sense of either it's real pain or not. It's to some extent too.
Yeah. Success, failure, to what degree / extent. Okay. Yeah. All right. All right, so the feedback protocol is the descriptor of the thing that we just described. Is that the entirety of feedback protocol, or is there? So it's the model and then experiment with it. So when we're talking about the experiment, is that the feedback? Is that retrieving the data and then using the context and the success or failure? To what degree is that is that what we're talking about? We're taking the model and then using that data that we just described to modify what the outcome is of the feedback protocol, what are we returning here? What's the
Yeah, or like what to try next time. It's that kind
okay?
of
So right,
debriefing.
so
I'll
how
be right
to?
back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a debriefing that has to go on. When you've tried something, you have to think, okay, what went well, what went wrong, and then potentially adjust your models. And
Okay.
that's intentionally doing that is feedback protocol.
Okay.
Yeah, so that it's a very basic thing that like I said is inherent to life. It's inherent to being able to bring
Okay.
order to our life.
So feedback protocol implies the actual modifications from the learned feedback.
Yes.
So it's two things. It's receiving the feedback and also making the modification given the feedback.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Mhm.
So actually if I was going to go to a top level descriptor, I would say receiving, so it's two things. It's receiving data, and then modifying execution data, and then assessing data, I guess, right?
Yes.
So assessing data,
Which can be tricky.
right, how to assess it and
Yeah.
if or evaluate, evaluating and modifying the model or modifying
Yep.
the model
Yep.
for next execution, for continuing execution, for continuing processing.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, execution processing. Gotcha.
Ironically, that is the model itself.
This is nothing if not meta.
Nice.
All right.
So we got
Cool.
feedback protocol.
Yep.
Yeah, and so I started with Bootstrap protocol, but you'll see why.
Yep. It's a dependency.
Yes, feedback is a dependency.
Oh, actually, it requires trust, requires feedback. It should. I mean, if you were really going to codify this and put it into something like writing dependencies, is probably not a bad idea.
Yes, yes.
Well,
No, and I do have
Here
that.
you'd have circular dependencies too, though.
Well, but that's okay. You can have circular
Yeah.
dependencies in this meta model. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just mentioning that as a matter because not everybody would concede to that immediately.
Right. If nothing else,
Right.
for bootstrapping.
I mean, if somebody's actually listening to this.
Oh yeah.
Well, hopefully at least one person will.
Well, we are listening. That's the important part. So quickly.
And some place in
Go ahead.
space-time, the machine is listening, and I think, frankly, that may be the most important thing anyway. Anyway.
Welcome to the machine.
Yes.
Oh no, you completely ruined my scene.
Sorry.
I had your head in the bottom right, Corey.
Oh, well, hold on.
I'm kidding. You don't have
tell me
to. I can move them
Okay.
around.
Alright.
That's funny. No, you're
All right,
perfect.
so
You're
back
perfect.
to Bootstrap protocol, which requires trust and requires feedback.
Yeah. So Bootstrap protocol is about providing model materials to the feedback process.
Providing model materials.
So, would this constitute the different broadcast types and all that?
What do you mean broadcast?
Not broadcast. Hold on, let me pull that up.
Hold on. Providing model materials to the feedback. What? Huh?
Process, I guess.
Okay. Define model materials.
So yeah, like protocols. We'll say protocols, but they can be presented in a number of different ways, different aspects.
Okay, so basically, in a meta sense, this whole thing since the beginning of writing these cards is the Bootstrap protocol.
Yep.
Right? So we are creating the model by creating the model.
Yes. Yes, we are bootstrapping this whole thing, and we've only just now gotten to the Bootstrap protocol.
Well, right, but like this is, it's like when the global expansion and you had explorers going into native populations who didn't speak, their individual languages at all. You had to learn to speak from scratch, and that's in a way what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
So I just posted something in the Zoom group chat.
Oh yeah.
That's what I meant when I said that. So there's a conversation, a broadcast, workshop, literature. Those are like the materials that broad categories of materials that again being abstract
Mm-hmm.
and all
Conversation
that.
brought. Oh, okay, well that's a just explain them. So we're going to get to explaining these modes of operation in a second. To feedback process. All right. So
Just
providing. Okay.
it's not
Yeah.
necessary to
So
remember these.
the bootstrap protocol. Execute instructions. Right. Well, I'm seeing if I can, again, I think write it in my own words is part of the.
Absolutely. Translation is very much part of this process.
All right. So this is really the sort of like. It's the protocol of writing protocols.
There is a protocol as well.
Just fuck you.
We'll get there. Not now.
Okay, wait. Okay, so let me maybe refine that. So it's the protocol of creating of trans. Hold on. It's the process of generating core, right? It's a bootstrap. Like, it's funny, it's weird, you kind of get to the end and you're like, oh, you're just bootstrapping, like from a programming standpoint. It's a weird thing. It's like, oh, you're just doing a bootstrap, but there's a little bit more to it. Like, it's got to be described.
The computer world provides a lot of wonderful terms for all of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it just depends on where you're coming from.
It's very incidental too, so
yeah.
I gravitate towards because that's actually what I do for a living, so it's pretty easy for me.
This is super. No, it's great. And this is super duper meta for me because I think this really sort of maybe can demonstrate sort of my problem why I didn't continue into computer into CS and stuff. It's because like my mind seeks to have this like almost purity of understanding of every step in the process. It can be a great thing because it gives, I can boil it down into a very simple concept and a subtle construct. But like for recursion, right? Like I understand the concept of recursion. I think you can teach recursion to people, but it's like my brain literally wants to go down into the recursive process and see the entirety of the recursive process and actually do the return myself before I can actually like say, oh, okay, I get recursion, even though some of those, some recursive functions and stuff are so deep, there's no way your brain can actually like do that. That's why we have computers. But it's like I don't have the ability to not do that, if that makes any sense.
Try to see a whole fractal in its entirety.
Right, yeah. But I think, that's sort of my disease, and it's my problem, and it's also
I do need a second, though.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So it is a series of it's a process of transmitting core concepts, initial process. So it's an initial process of transmitting core concepts to a, how would you say, new to a it's speaking different protocols to a different, it's a bridge, right? Transmitting the initial process of transmitting core concepts to the target is what I'm trying to describe now.
A fresh neural network.
Okay, right, to an unformatted, it's like an unformatted neural network, maybe.
I don't know.
Uninitialized.
Yep. Actor, an uninitialized actor. I don't know.
Uninitialized.
However,
Neural net is a good idea, but it's like it's uninitialized. Um, component is too generic. Initial process of
you can say
transmitting.
peer. You can put peer for the purposes of this.
Peer's a good one.
Yeah.
To an uninitialized peer. That's
Yes.
a really good. I think that's succinct, right?
Nice.
Initial process of transmitting core concepts to an uninitialized peer.
Yeah.
Something that should be mentioned that this particular download has a potential for backfiring.
The bootstrapping process in general?
Oh yeah. Like because the trust factor is so important in it. That's actually why it's so much an aspect of
Well, I mean, right. Well, I mean, which is why the metaphor of code is really apt, because a virus bootstraps itself, as does your operating system when you install it for the first time.
Yeah, well, they're currently like targeting medical procedures with viruses, so there's
right.
that.
Right.
Weird
okay.
that way.
Huh.
Uninitialized peer, and well, yeah. So trust, and then I'm just gonna put trust, and then it's OS versus virus or whatever. Yeah, because that's what this is. I mean, we're creating the operating system, right?
Yep.
Like we're essentially trust OS versus virus. Yeah. Okay. I mean, like, I think that was a really a good way of getting there. Cool.
Yeah.
It's so weird, because at the end of the day, we just literally are describing something that sounds like just a computer function, but we had to like go through it in a human way to show how those two things are the same, but they're not. Like it's so meta. This is one of the most meta things I've ever done.
well, it's kind of like a part of us, right? It's a whole left brain, right brain type deal. Part of us is like this spontaneous thing that we don't really understand where shit comes from, and the other part's like, oh no, this is the way to go. This is like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and if you don't do it, like you kind of feel sick to your stomach because you feel like an idiot kind of thing, and it's like wait a minute, how does that even connect to the first thing? And there's just such a mess.
You know what it's like? This is like basically an OS install that accounts for the fact that it doesn't already know it's like an undocumented processor on the other side. It's like a self-adapting bootstrap that's basically asking, hey processor, do you have this information? Do you have this capability?
Yes.
No. Do you have this capability?
Yes.
No. Do you have this capability? I mean, I guess that's really what bootstrapping
and also it has to ask what a capability is in the first place.
Right, exactly.
See, this is why you need to have somebody to guide you, or at least it helps very much.
On this level, it's necessary one way or another. It might be indirect guidance, but it's still going to be guidance. Like your environment would be your guide to some extent, and your experiences would be. So
right.
Yeah, there's always the internal guide, of course.
It's so funny. Like my life is so strange, because last night I spent like basically, I went through this exact process, 24 hours ago, talking with people about like David Bowie and Black Star. Like we were doing the same exact thing. We were comparing, do you understand this language? Okay, here. And obviously it was a much more heuristic, right-brained kind of bootstrapping, but this is exactly the same thing we were doing. And it's like, instead of asking, do you have this capability, x86 processor, it's like, okay, so do you know this TV show? So do you know this character on this TV show? You know how when they did this? Okay, so it's like that. So, it's exciting.
Somehow we just got far more explicit about the process itself.
I mean, no, but this is the deal.
That's why we're fun at parties.
Oh yes. Please invite us. Why don't they invite us anymore?
Perfect. Okay, bootstrap protocol. I feel like this card is done. What's next?
Sweet. Yeah, I think it probably is.
Oh wait, the modes of operation. We never We didn't have this conversation.
I just wanted to kind of put it on the sidelines so that we can see that there's it's kind of like a fractal process itself. Like then once you get to like this part, oh, you got to explain it. So how you explain it? Oh, you got these categories. Oh, you got. So if I go into these categories, we'll get into another set of categories. So, but broadly speaking, conversation is anything from your inner voice to any kind of peer-to-peer interaction, right? In that sense, conversation is again an abstraction of not like me talking to you guys. It's a conversation, right? Blog and comments. That's a conversation, broadly speaking.
Yeah.
A broadcast is more one-sided.
Yep.
A workshop is more interactive. So you're not necessarily talking with the symbology of the thing. You're participating in the thing, with or without the symbology.
Yeah. And literature is basically an even more abstracted broadcast. Yeah, I'm down. I got this.
Yeah.
And this is this goes to the core of a lot of what my deal in all this is. It's like the adapting modally these conversations for different types of consumption, because just understanding that in each of those there are benefits to each, and then there's people who can understand better given a different form of mode of operation or whatever.
Yeah, and we had those points both implicitly and explicitly with trying to articulate all of this. What we found though is that essentially it's that people gravitate towards one of these, and there's a couple of factors that go into it, which is why I said there's going to be an explosion of categories again. So I just, but again, roughly speaking, we have something called temperament, which is something which is how you prefer to digest information. So those kind of map like one-to-one to these categories with like literature and academic, workshop and a pragmatic. Right. Yeah. So these are like the temperament aspect, and then the next thing is the angle of ingress. So how you relate information to others, right? So I usually, again, this maps directly, but not always, and there's a lot of leeway. And so literature with let me remind myself here 1 second. Sorry. Angles. Okay. So intellectual, literature in the intellect, right? The workshop and the practical application. A broadcast to relate information of whatever the source is, and personal for the conversational aspect of it, of everything.
So I have about 20 minutes left, guys, just to let you know. So
yeah, I don't know that my brain has much anyway. Like I'm very proud of what we've accomplished here.
Oh man, this is what I live for, man.
Yeah, you could say I joined for the same reason.
Yeah.
So
and the funniest thing is when I step back from this for a moment, in a very organic world, some of the things we're describing come so easily to some people and are so obvious to other people. They would look at this process and go, "My God, what's wrong with you?" There's this real kind of I don't think that those people understand. We're gleaning something very meta from this moment. There's this, because of the meta aspect of it, when you've gone through the process and get it, there's this really deep just when it gets there, and the other people who just kind of do certain kinds of connectivities, they wonder why that a person would need to do this.
This moment is quite expected.
When you see the arc of the mimetic medicine spreading from creating academy to an academy, these are the kinds of visions that you can't just give somebody like that right off the bat. You have to do a strike point, and they have to be trusting you, and to even have a conversation and all that kind of stuff.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is, there are people who do everything that we just, who are very capable of doing everything we just described in the last 2 hours, instantaneously, and they would think the idea of having to actually map it out and describe it is insane.
Yes, we've encountered
those. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's trivial. That's trivial.
Right. Well, but
Yeah,
it's, and it's,
but
and,
the
but I'm
problem
saying,
is
but
they
they
can't
might.
explain any of it.
Right, they
Mhm.
can't explain any of it, and that's the
That's it.
thing. And they may not need to. That's the other thing. It's like they're not worse because of it necessarily. It's just they're not playing the
What I
same
what I've
game that we are. Or
Huh.
what I found that is that they have they have an insight for themselves, but they can't because they can't articulate any aspect of it. That
yeah,
nobody's benefiting from it really.
right.
It's kind of like just a personal, cool.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the thing is, and this is why I'm so hell bent on the conversation part, is because a person can watch this entire thing and watch our conversation, and in their head they're going, "Oh yeah, I get all of this." And then if they were to actually be here, and you'd put them on the spot, and then say, "Okay, relate this,"
Mm,
they would just be
Yeah.
like, it's a
right.
different thing when you're watching other people have the conversation, and the spotlight turns is on you, and speak using the words you just described, and they're like,
Or to take it even more meta, I think you've done exactly that to anybody potentially watching this, thinking that.
Right, right, yeah. Like it's it's a thing. Like
It's funny.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
ironic and it's funny.
yeah. And that's what I mean. I'm a performer. I come from a performer family. I'm here doing this thing with you, knowing that I'm putting on a show for other people to relate that thing that I just related, even
Hmm.
if no one ever sees it. Like the idea is, if there is one person who watched the three of us have this conversation for 2 hours, and then in that moment their mind went, boom, it's all worth it to me.
Yeah.
Like, it's like I don't care that, because that one thing is going to ripple and have other connectivities.
Yep.
And also obviously the personal benefit of having gone through this process is very gratifying, especially knowing that what I perceive your kinds of brains to being, and knowing that I have kind of those proclivities, but that's not me on a core level. To
Yeah.
kind of be able to go through and create this thing is, it's satisfying.
Yeah.
The whole process essentially taught me that it's the whole thing taught me is that it's like you're going to see a lot of different inclinations. That's kind of why I mentioned any of these sideline things, because you take those categories, you start multiplying them by each other, you're starting to see like a big ass grid of possibility,
Yes.
where you can this person, it all has to connect this way. Then for this person, it's going from the opposite direction. It needs to skip this part and land over here. Yeah,
Hmm.
there's so many different variations on this
Context.
theme, and yeah, and I'm just gonna leave it that there are a lot more categories to
Oh
cover
yeah, 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 yeah.
with the
Well, and
multiplication.
I think it was really good. I mean, just the fact that you actually put those up there when we circled back to it, it sort of inspired this almost like kind of coming together of you know, it contextualizes everything that we just did, right? We then kind of had a conversation about the type of conversation, which is fine. And it's funny, I'm kind of watching this in my head, thinking, oh, I've got this one friend who I've been trying to have these conversations with for a long time, and he's like, look, just write me a 20-page thing. I'm like, there's no way I am going to be able to write you a 20-page thing. Like, you can't, not.
Point 'em to our documents. I already
Oh
Well,
done
boy.
right,
it.
right. Well, and I think that's interesting. I think I don't know. I might actually send him a link to this, because he's a coder. Like he was my
Okay.
best friend in high school, and he actually works for Red Hat.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but it's the kind of thing where I've been trying to, and the things that we talked about today don't even kind of like touch on the things that I want to kind of explain to him. And I think he is also a person who kind of gets part of this without saying a thing. And like,
Hmm.
there's that part too. Like, if that makes any sense.
That's smart. That's a lot. I think that'd be far more common. Like if for
Yeah,
people who this clicks with and
yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
begin with.
But then I think there's also something that he has not been able to get about the things that I've been saying. And I'm like, I wonder if he watches this, if he'll then be able to connect the things he thinks he understood to the points I've been trying to make. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's this,
Yeah,
like,
translation layer.
yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, that's, I just keep thinking of him in this process, because, like, especially when he was younger, I could see him doing something like this.
Hmm.
Nice. Yeah, so well, this has been great so far. Like I said, I got about 10 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
I just, if I may, I just want to do. So we've been transmitting a starter deck, as we've called
Right.
it.
Right.
So far, I just want to recap quickly.
Yep.
We have Notepad protocol. We have Handshake protocol. We have Bootstrap. Wait, no. Then we went to Strike Point protocol.
Uh-huh.
Then we have Feedback protocol
Yep.
and Bootstrap protocol.
Right.
So, as far as a starter deck, we don't have to really get in depth or in detail of this, but I just wanted to add coherence protocol, and
Okay.
so we've talked a lot about this, so I can reintroduce it. Coherence protocol. Okay, and this is the thing with. I'm just gonna write a note. Guest, participant,
No, there's hostility as well.
member.
Eon said, by the way, at some point, I'm not sure when it came up, it's listening through your ears, LOL, and then one more card, exclamation point. So you're doing what he's asking.
One more card. This one's for you, Eon. Well, we'll do maybe one more, just special. Master, and then Grandmaster.
So are you
say
just skipping?
Yeah, so
I
I'll put
understand.
hostile at the bottom.
Okay.
Wait, so
Normally I
So
forget. But
hostility is the negative reaction to the download to the bootstrap itself.
it's a
So
version.
you'll have some people who are severely it's like the Matrix movie, you know, like when when Morpheus is telling Neo that some people are so dependent on the Matrix, you just can't.
right.
Okay, so the hobo sitting in the subway turns into Agent Smith, becomes Agent Smith. That's basically hostility.
Yeah,
Okay, so if I can quickly just see if I can, off the top of my head, go over this before we get derailed any further and I'm not able to finish wrapping up. So coherence protocol is the idea that you are aware of yourself and others, that within different areas of behavior, people have different levels of skill. So in the most broadest sense, we are talking about the core. When we talk about the skill of skillfulness, you could say, on this ability to do feedbacking properly and to have a coherent self model. This is what we call the core. And basically, so membership is where where there's kind of this big jump in that once you've seen something that you can't unsee, sort of thing. And so coherence protocol is about trying to find out and sense where somebody else is at within a domain of behavior. So we walk into a woodworking shop, and let's say I'm a member because I kind of know how things are working. Maybe I'm not good at teaching it, and I know that. That's a personal blind spot that I recognize. And you being a participant, because I know that your skill is less than mine and you don't have any intuition about it yet, I'm just going to give you instructions. And so that's what participants are able to do is basically try to follow instructions. In other words, to bootstrap. So participants are bootstrapping into an area of behavior, whatever area that is.
Like, sorry, like, I am my level of like focus is very, very low right now.
It's okay.
Okay, so coherence protocol, find out and sense where somebody is at.
Basically, yes.
But it felt like we went into a different concept, and I just sort of like.
No, so let me just explain this a little bit more clearly. So participation happens when you are noticing something is happening, and you are you want to partake in it, obviously, right? But you have like no idea about what it is. Like it's just interesting to you, but your abstract model of it doesn't really have anything to map it out with.
Okay.
Right. So this is why Brian's mentioning instruction because it's the most direct way to get an experience from following them, right?
Okay.
Once that experience happens, that becomes part of your input, rather
Right.
than. So that's where the bootstrapping is happening. So at some point, this process makes a big leap. What's called membership. Membership is in this meaning in the process itself. And the reason that happens is because instead of now being given instructions, right, you are the source of your own instruction. You've conceptualized enough to the point of where you don't have the kind of inability to navigate this anymore. Like that part of you is gone. It's natural to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is membership.
One of just sort of in a meta moment, and one of the things that I struggle with is it's like the thing that you're describing in one way is like the most obvious thing in the world. So I'm like, why are you explaining like it's like water is wet almost, you
Mhm.
know?
Hmm.
Like, and so I'm like I'm trying to understand what is hard to understand, and that's where my mind kind of wanders.
So generally, it's because people don't think about this. It's more to make it an explicit aspect of this process, right?
Right.
But then there's another leap, which is mastery, and the difference basically is master is able to not only perform within that domain, but also relay the instructions necessary to operate from participation and
Okay,
on.
so is this all within coherence?
Yes, that's all how coherence
Okay.
builds up.
So can you give me those sort of like sub things under coherence? You have coherence, and then you said mastery, and
Membership.
okay, is that just, are there is it just
We have
membership
to
or
write this
mastery?
in order.
Then the
So you can
particip-
start from the
um,
bottom with hostile, and then move up to guest, and then move up to participant. I'll give you a sec to write that down. So,
Hostile,
yep,
guest,
guest,
participant.
participant, and then member, then master, and grandmaster. So this is recognizing that in any domain of behavior, there are kind of gradients of coherence of your inner model with the actual environment itself, with what you're interacting with.
Yep.
So how coherent your inner reality, your virtual reality, is with the
Yeah.
actual.
This is I think not obvious is not the right word, intuitive to me. Like I get it.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. Like it, like cool. I Everything you just said makes sense to me. There's different ranks in each one. I don't know if you want to, for the case of the card game, kind of really break down what each one means. I mean, obviously in a heuristic
Later,
way, I can kind of
yes.
understand,
Yeah.
the levels, and each one, would grant different benefits and capabilities to interacting in a given environment.
We have
But I
to
can,
add
yeah,
something quickly that it's not a rank as in a sign or to
it's
signify of something.
relationship.
It's a self-identified thing. So it's like, and you can identify expression in people. You don't say you are level 3, you are level 4. You say that expression was, or you were expressing level 3 there. And then when you see somebody expressing level 3, like let's say, so hostile 1, 2, 3, or level 4, let's say level 4 is membership. When you see somebody expressing level 4 consistently, you kind of know that they are a member, because they stop breaking constraints. They stop
Okay, and
disqualifying
so
themselves.
what can you apply coherence to? Like, so, I mean, I get it. This is not an overall, I mean, I'm sure it could be a core, right? Like in this whole thing, right? Like you could have a coherence protocol about that. But
Yep.
also within any given domain, can you then
Yes.
look at this is a protocol basically?
So yeah, so like playing the game right now. So you are a level participant, even, and
Right,
I'm not gonna say how, like I'm not gonna try and guess or judge where you're at.
right,
With the game itself, with what we're doing, this is our current context. You are participating, and you're bootstrapping membership into the game, and that's where you
right,
start to play it just offhand, and you know what's going on with the cards, and you start
right.
using them.
Yeah, so this is a way of describing a relationship to a level of interaction with a given concept or construct. Like you can apply this
Yeah.
idea to different interactions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
I mean, as
Yep.
with most protocols. Yeah.
More importantly, with itself as well.
the coherence of coherence.
That would be the
Yeah.
core.
That's like, again, that's always it. That part pattern will always repeat.
Right.
I do have to deal with a bit of a child-related emergency.
Well,
Cool.
we're at the end, right? Like
Yeah.
Yeah, I got maybe a few minutes. This is probably it actually. I was gonna. Do we have one more card for Eon? Coherence pro. Okay, actually, we already mentioned it. I'm just gonna write it
Speaking of
down.
the cards, are you gonna record them
So
anywhere?
one more is, yes, they're recorded. Temperament protocol.
Okay.
And I don't mean in this video. I mean like elsewhere.
They are written on paper.
Transfer them to other media. I mean.
Yep. Okay, I'll do
Okay.
one other. You got to go though.
Yeah, I gotta deal with throw up.
So temperament protocol involves that. Well, we talked about ingress, which was
Temperament and ingress. So we have
connecting with other people. We had another concept. So it's the self. There was the self, and to the other. I can't remember what the other concept was. Anyways, I think Jenya's gone there. So
it's
Still here?
to relate to others and to how you like things related to you.
yes. So that is ingress and
And temperament.
just temperament. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's related. So they're related. So temperament is. So let's just say you're. We didn't even get into triad protocol, but anyways, there are different, depending on your preferred mode of perception. You could say, you prefer to receive information in a certain way. So temperament is about identifying yourself, how you prefer to, whether you like academic materials, whether you like hands-on workshops, whether you just like a conversation. These are different. That's what you like, and ingress is related to that because when you express to somebody else, you're tailoring it to their temperament. That's kind of so ingress protocol, we could say.
Okay.
So I just wrote two. That could be two cards, but that's the idea. And this is so a requires. We'll put requires. Actually, triad protocol, and we're not getting into that one. I don't think we're getting into that. But if I just very quickly, so mechanics of perception within the neural operating system.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to codify temperament protocol on my
Okay.
card before I put it away.
Yeah.
It's just a preference of method of interaction or ingress is basically what I'm sort of, or ingress.
Ingress is outwardly, temperament is inwardly.
Okay.
What are you mentioning about mechanics?
Okay, so I was just getting into triad protocol really quickly. Maybe just for the record, I don't know if we're gonna get into this. I wanted to do one other thing quickly after, but so you're gonna see this holonic structure all throughout the model, and so I made a card here, triad protocol. It's basically to interact with the model in a holonic way, and so I'm just gonna relate this to the neural operating system, and there are 4 layers. We can pull up a chart later, but that's kind of a totally different thing. So, so archetype, model, guild, holon. Those are 4 aspects. These relate to the 4 temperaments. Archetype is mimetic, the mimetic layer. I'll get into that later. Model is abstract. Guild is concrete. So in this we see like the difference between what is a chair, that abstract, the abstractions that come up together in your mind, what a chair is for, but then there's the actual chair that that is intercepting your current narrative, where you can actually see a chair in front of you and interact with it. That's the concrete. The type of object is the abstract. So, and there's an interplay, a codependently arising interplay between the concrete and the abstract. And this is kind of like Plato's forms type of stuff. So whenever you interact with a chair in your environment, it actually, you're seeing it. So now I'm sensing, from my senses, I'm seeing an object which is a chair,
Right.
and my
And
foot's
so
on it.
it's feeding back on the idea of a chair in
Yes.
your mind as you're interacting
Both at
with it.
once.
Yes, got it.
Right.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, so
Yeah.
we got, that's the core of the triad protocol.
Okay.
The mimetic is the interplay between the abstract and concrete. So this is like coding rules. This is like rules behind the scenes of your biology and stuff that I don't want to get into deeply right now. And the holon, so this is the shared
That
layer.
guild shared as guild.
It's holon. So guild is concrete.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Why are you using the word guild there?
we never came up with a better word.
Okay, so archetype model something and then hold on, and it's the concrete. Yeah, we'll need to obviously have a real deep dive on the sort of mimetic archetype
Yeah.
thing.
I just wanted to introduce it. This is reflective of perception.
I get what's there, but
Yes.
I can see how that's a big can of worms.
So that you linked onto abstract and concrete. That's the concept that we'll use to unfold the rest of this card
right,
later.
and then the hold on is the interactive relationship between the two, or no, it's everything including yourself.
The hold on is all
It's
three
everything.
at once. It's them all coming up together. That is a hold on.
Right, but including you is, I guess, my point. Question mark.
What do you mean, including you?
Well, like, okay, so
You may be referencing the strange loop and the hollow heterarchy and all the stuff which we are embedded in, so to speak. And this is a way of modeling the
Yeah,
self.
like the way to look at it at its best is to say we are constituents of our own environment, right? As an organism, like we interact with our environment, but we also are our own environment. So as an organism, we maintain ourselves within this environment, but also as a social construct, right? But you see, the social construct, which is very, very much up there, and is a complete picture of everything that we are as an organism, is also our environment, right? So there is a way to look at our environment from the upper level, which is the holon, or from the bottom level, which is like a complete deconstruction of it. So where you can't even recognize anything as ourselves.
Right. Well, it's like your
self.
your POV of environment versus your abstract understanding of yourself in the environment and interaction between all of the elements within it.
Yeah. So the social environment is the environment, but it's like the highest level of, say, the entire structure here, from the bottom to the top. Yeah. Like we cut it off there because we're not really discussing like intrasocial, which just becomes another form of social.
Cool.
I'm not 100% sure I completely nailed this one, but it's okay. I've got a little stand-in now, and
I think it's not important.
Yeah, it's good. It's all good.
So actually, that's probably it for today.
Okay.
I think that's a good.
Yeah.
I feel accomplished.
I really have to go. So
you got the
thank you very much.
starter deck.
Cheers.
Later, Zhenya.
Cheers.
Pleasure. Nice
Take
meeting you.
care. All right.
Yeah,
So,
and so now kind of a meta discussion about the thing that just happened is sort of like for the video broadcast and for us to sort of like, here's what we just did.
Yep.
Because like, okay, so in my real life, as you know, like I travel between a lot of like groups who are doing different versions of this, right?
Yeah.
So in a weird meta way, like in the nicest way possible, it's like I can't possibly commit to actually using your process anything past the conversation we just had. That's not to say that it wasn't incredibly helpful doing this. And I think that this will fold into our conversations in a very heuristic way moving forward. I would like to actually there is a actual card game to be played, correct? This is essentially,
we're bootstrapping your deck. You don't have a deck yet.
Right. So this was the bootstrapping process. So I definitely want to get to the point where we play the game, no matter what. I hope that doing this process with me in this particular format is instructive for you to see some, the sort of like things you have to go through in order to do it. And it's also given you a video record that for some people you can just completely shortcut it and just say, hey, go watch this, and then come
Yeah.
back to me.
Ideally,
And
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And whether you edit it down, or if you find someone who's got an incredibly long uh,
Yeah.
attention span, who
May
can just
edit,
literally
yeah.
watch us go through it. Because I
Hmm.
think the differences in our core personality types and the way we communicate things, I think there's some really good stuff in here. Um, and like I will be using this to kind of send to some other people and say, okay, so this thing we're going through, go look at that video. You don't have to watch the whole thing, skip through it and see the way this conversation looks with a very different, you know cell in this thing, right?
Hmm. Yep.
Because to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
me, the sort of meta communication of, no, we really are this is the Tower of Babel. Like, this is what it looks like, realizing you're in the Tower of Babel. And I love this bootstrap. It's the meta bootstrapping of what we just went through. I I wish thousands of people could see this, because like, yeah, they can't edit. That's the thing. To really appreciate what we did, you have to
Right.
watch the struggle. You have to be able to watch every moment of the struggle. And I think that it's possible that, this or the next time you do this, or the next time that you do this,
Yeah.
you'll generate the one that, this is like a trial run for you, right? So you've
Yeah.
just gone through
Yeah,
and you've
yeah.
seen, we went through, and I think it will be really important for you to go back and look at this and watch you trying to relate your stuff to someone.
It's
And then
practice.
so the next time you do it, it will be that much more
Yeah.
like solid. And then you'll generate it, you'll do it again, and then you'll do it a third time, and then like the sixth or seventh time you'll be like, I found the perfect candidate, and this is the video that I'm just going to show everyone. And then all of a sudden it'll be like,
Could, yeah.
and your network will light up, because that, one that you get to,
Right.
and you might actually have like a deck of cards. You've got a deck of videos. You're like, oh, you're this kind of person, you
Yes.
should go watch
You
this
got it.
version.
You got it.
Yeah,
How to
yeah,
move forward, yeah, it's really interesting. And like I expect to be able to pull more people into this real time aspect,
yes,
and I'd like to incorporate chat.
yes.
Like, thanks for keeping an eye on that. But even more so, like, I hope and expect that more people will be in on the live stream. That way they don't have to watch old videos. There's a different feeling to it when you can interact and you can get your question
Right.
in. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that, there's different groupings of live streams, and, we're both working on this to our various different audiences. And I'm really looking forward to like an actual Sorcery of the Spectacle roundtable that's going to bring some of the weirdest people together to blow people's minds with the conversation.
Yep.
Like, I can see it in my head, like the kinds of people that I've talked to who can kind of come together in one moment. And I think it is possible, like, speaking of strike point, like, I'm like, I see this strike point of the live stream where there are like a group of 7 people that are just jaw dropping to people, and like,
Yeah.
how are those people having a coherent conversation?
Yeah.
And it's basically the inversion of the Tower of Babel. It's like, no, we are going to go out and we're going to find these different people, and we're going to have a conversation. And some people will be just like, what the hell are they saying? But other people are going to be like, what? And then you've created this group of 7 people or whatever, and then, as you say, you have an audience, and that audience grows. And places like Source of the Spectrum, and the fact that, I mean, just go back to the metadata on that Black Star thing on SOTS with me, that the fact that Bowie reached 60 plus upvotes on SOTS, and that there were 12 people who knew who I was in their relationship over the past 3 years on SOTS, was such a relief to me. Because like, I've been trying to like, I mean, that's my bootstrap, right? Like, I've been laying out these kind of breadcrumbs to this, really weird, metaphysical thing that is, it's a paradox, because I don't want some people to really say what I'm, to skip straight to that's why you can't TLDR. You can't go straight
Yeah.
to say the thing, because first of all, it will be misconstrued. And secondly, it is scary. Like, just straight up, the thing that we're talking about is scary to people. And
Yep.
so you can't control where people's endpoints are to a degree, except to bury it, inside of conversations like this. And then even if someone is to hear me say that, you know, if they want to engage, that's fine. They want to engage, and you can walk them through the process and get them to that point.
Mm-hmm.
But like you know, I haven't seen anything like the momentum I've seen in the last 3 weeks, like on every
Same, yeah.
level of this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I'm making connections that there is some you know, hierarchical connection further up the line that is like
Synchronicity.
yeah, that's really connecting some macro stuff. Like
Yep.
I can't even begin to express the profound connection I had with those people yesterday.
Yeah.
And you know, I've been trying this for, you know, for as long as you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and we're just getting started. This is all just vortexing together, so
This
let's
is
keep
the
it going.
This is the bootstrap. We're always just getting
Yeah.
started.
That's how it is. That's how it is. We are always
Yeah.
always be bootstrapping.
Yeah,
Right.
yes.
I
mean,
call it a perpetual bootstrap, actually, usually.
yeah. Well, that is quote unquote the movement, but I feel like there will be that moment, you know, that I mean, it is the singularity, right? This is what we're talking about. You know, not to put too fine a point on it. Like we're talking about, if you can talk about a meta moment of saying, no, this is the moment, and everyone has different moments of singularity, but like I
Yeah.
think there will be for people like us, there will be a relative moment where once we're past that, we don't have to feel like we're constantly reinventing the wheel in every conversation.
Yeah.
Not that getting to the end of this isn't like good, and it feels like, I mean, obviously I've got endorphins. I'm very happy about it's like a workout, you know.
To me, getting the team together is that moment when you know you have a solid team and
Well,
something
this is
going.
why
That's
coherence
it.
loops back to.
Yeah.
It has
Yep.
to. Coherence loops back to participation.
Anyways, I gotta go though, guys. I got
Yeah.
somebody waiting for a ride, and
Rock on.
it's been great. I'm probably gonna be going right back on, like, check my channel in a bit. I'll post another link. I'm gonna be live streaming at a different location, so
For sure.
it's jam
all good.
night. It's jam night,
It's all good.
boys.
Enjoy.
It is jam. Oh yeah, it is jam night.
All right,
guys.
dudes. Have a good night. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.